Hello, my BMX nerd friends. Welcome back to another episode of Kanode Knows, brought to you by Dig BMX. Sorry this episode is late, but it's worth the wait because we got Van Homan on the show. You know, the man needs no introduction. Legendary, changed the game, paved the way for your favorite rider's favorite rider. And also just a dude that I'd like to go get a beer with sometime. He seems pretty fun. This is, I think, the first time we've really talked. I think we shook hands at a Nora Cup or something, but this was a good long conversation, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Like the video, subscribe, share the show with a friend. Let's get into it. Here's Van Homan. Hey, Stan Bowman. Thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
Have you heard anything from Van Homan lately? Dude, I thought that was cool. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Source BMX bike check you did with yourself, interviewing yourself, was pretty funny to me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun little project. Like I'd been doing all those bike checks for the Source, and we thought people might be interested to see what I was riding, so we kind of came up with a fun way of doing it. And then James Cox is obviously very clever with the computers, and for him that's a very simple. To me, that seems very complicated. Like I'm in the shot and both things, but for him that's really easy. So yeah, we just had a little fun with it. And, yeah.
Dude, James Cox is a name that I haven't heard in a minute. I heard it on your interview on Unclicked. You're talking about him and how, I sweated James Cox. I guess I still sweat James Cox, but it's cool that you get to work with him. So shit, I don't want to go right into shit that's already been covered. So you work for Source at the moment.
Yeah. So
Yeah, tell me about James Cox and Source.
So yeah, I mean, I have two jobs at the moment, but yeah, one of them is working for Source and doing a lot of product content stuff. So I write a lot of product descriptions, and I kind of organize the bike checks and things. And a lot of times, whenever I'm traveling, if there's an opportunity to link up with people and do some bike checks, I find whatever local filmers we can, and then we always send that footage to James. And then also when I'm actually go to Hastings in England to do, like, I'm sure you see them on Instagram where I'm just like, hi, this is a new fit cranks, 175, whatever. We'll like bang out a whole bunch of those in a day. Like I'll kind of make sure I have my scripts all typed out so I know what I want to say about them, and we'll stage all the products, and we'll just roll through them. So we have like plenty of social media content for Source for a while. So
Do you feel like you're still passionate about the actual bike parts? Because for me, dude, the lengths and all that stuff. Like, do you still geek out on that stuff?
I mean, I find it interesting. Definitely, especially doing this role, like kind of looking more into depth into things and discovering a little bit more about why things are designed a specific way or what makes them different from every other version of that product that's available. I mean, if you're looking at plastic pedals, there's 100 different plastic pedals. I mean, a lot of them are very similar, but a lot of brands do things that may be subtle differences that might make someone say, oh, I like that one, suits my style of riding more than another. And I think in general, that's the goal with the Source stuff, is when we talk about products, is try to point out what's different about it or what type of rider it works for. Because a lot of times, especially if you're a newer rider and you look and there's different stem lengths and different bar heights and all these things, you're like, okay, but what does that mean? I see the specs, but what does
Right.
that actually mean to me, and which one works for my style of riding? If I want to do these types of tricks or ride this type of terrain, or I'm this height, what's best for me? I mean, that was one thing that even some of the comments pointed out when I started doing the bike checks that I took note of, was they were really curious, like, how tall is this person, so that it's relative to the size parts they're riding, so they can kind of, without that information, it's kind of, you might not be able to apply it to yourself. So I started like trying to do that and always ask the riders how tall they were, so that
Yeah.
it
How
has
tall are you?
context. I'm 6 foot even. Yeah.
Nice. I'm 6'3". We tall boys on the bikes,
All
dude.
right. Now you're extra tall.
Yeah, I mean, and we're riding little kids' bikes, so it's
Yeah.
fucking it's a weird situation.
Yeah.
Who's been your favorite bike check that you've done over the past while?
Oh, that's a good one. I think probably both of the younger Japanese kids that we did.
Little
I think
Suki.
those are really, yeah, we did Sosuke and Kylie Yamada, which and they were both really fun because neither one of them really speaks English, but we worked with, some of my friends in Japan that were doing the filming, and so they would just tell them what question I was going to ask before, and then when I would stop speaking, they would just answer the question. So
Nice.
if you're watching those, it looks like they understand my English really well, but they don't. And even I would just tell them, hey, tell them if I ask them another, like a follow up question, just tell them to say yes or hi. Like hi means yes in Japanese, like, and so like it's really funny. You can see the awkward looks on their faces sometimes, or like, but those were just fun because they're young kids and just like their spirit and the language barrier. I thought those ones were just really
Yeah,
fun,
that's incredible.
So
What a cool
yeah.
like juxtaposition. We got Van Homan standing next to this 13-year-old shredder. Is how old is Sosuke? So is that his name,
Uh, I think
Sosuke?
I think I think he's 12. Yeah.
Dude,
Sosuke. I think
Sosuke.
Sosuke is.
Sosuke.
I,
Sorry,
yeah.
Sosuke. Dude, yeah,
Yeah.
he's incredible. I love watching his clips on Instagram. It's a weird
Yeah.
new era that we're in, where it's like instead of
We
video parts, we're seeing Instagram clips. You know?
yeah, and we're getting ahead of ourselves because I already had this prepared for like when you ask like new riders later. I mean, I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
everyone's aware of it, but
hell yeah. We'll get to
I
that.
was
We'll get
already
to
I was
that.
already thinking ahead.
That's what's up. I say, who's up? Who's up next, Van Homan? Fuck it, let's talk about it now. Who do you got your eye on?
All right. So yeah, I guess if we're jumping right to that,
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to give like a shout out to the Japanese scene in general. Like first of all, like they're not necessarily new riders, but like Daisuke and Peggy, whose real name is Nabahiro Masuda, like they do like Motobunka and like Roadie Connect over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like for that scene and probably even for a lot of the BMX scene in general, they're somewhat well known, but maybe they get lost in the mix of like worldwide BMX. Maybe just 'cause I spent so much time there, I realized like how integral they are to the scene over there. And first of all, they're just really both like really creative street riders, and you know, like Dice K had a edit maybe probably a couple years ago now, but it was like one hit for a live, as a live edit, and just really super creative, So I think I would check
Spots.
out some of his writing
Yeah.
if you haven't yet. And
How do you spell Dice
um,
K again?
so Daisuke, and his Instagram is that underscore MB.
MTMB. Boom.
Yeah, and then Peggy's is at 4 Peggy.
Dude, it's kind of crazy how long I've been like following slash rocking with Mr. Four Peggy or Miss
Yeah.
Peggy. Dude, yeah,
Yeah, I just feel
Japanese
like
riders are awesome.
they just like hold the scene together over there, especially the street scene. And like now with doing Motabunka, they're doing like a lot of they do a lot of events and jams, and they're doing like a film festival in November. And
Sick.
so yeah, just doing a lot of cool shit for the Japanese scene, and just in my opinion, BMX in general, if you're paying attention. So um I definitely wanted to give a shout out to those guys and like everything that they're doing. And then uh on that, like speaking of some of the younger kids in Japan, like we already mentioned, Sosuke, and like obviously Sosuke is just like 12 years old and just crushing it on street, doing things that like, so it's going to be really fun to like watch his future. And then Kylie Yamada is just kind of like again 12 or 13 and just like a style cat, so just I like actually got him hooked up with Fit at one point when I first got over there, because he was like 8 or 9 at the time, and he just was like ripping one of the local parks, which is like Bashi Burger Chance, which like shout out to Bashi too, which is super cool guy, has like a skate park slash burger shop over there, and
Sick.
really like puts on a lot of cool events there too, like jams with like bands playing. And I feel like in general, Japan like really caters to like the younger scene too. It's really like a all inclusive kind of scene where I feel like it doesn't like intimidate the younger riders or like a family vibe, which
Yeah.
is something I think is really special about Japan.
How
But yeah,
so?
so like,
How do you think
um,
it's like more inclusive for the
yeah, I
kids?
don't know. I don't know. It just feels like any event that I would go to, it would just feel like there was a lot of younger kids and it would be like family oriented, like almost like what I would remember from BMX races back in the day where families would like show up with the van and be like cooking
Yeah.
food out of the back and like not like some younger kids showing up to a jam where there's a bunch of people smoking weed and drinking 40s and like feeling uncomfortable or intimidated by the older riders.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly why it's that way, but it definitely always felt more welcoming for like riders of all ages and like families and that kind of thing, where I feel like if maybe my dad took me to certain BMX jams when here now or back when I was a kid, that maybe it would be a little bit like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know about this, like,
Wow, those
so
guys are so cool smoking their cigarettes over
yeah.
there.
um but yeah, those two, so Sosuke and Kylie. And then there's like a young girl who's only like 11. Like her name is Reina Shirai, I think. Reina Shirai. And she was just like, you might have noticed her at, I noticed she was actually over in the USA recently at Crandall's event. The remind me of the name. What's the
How do you
why
spell Reina?
Rena, and her Instagram is reina.s.bmx.
Nice. Okay, cool.
And she's like, actually, there's a funny story with her too, because we did, so like, I'm sure we'll get to this later, but like I also worked for Olympic stuff and did that for a while in Tokyo, which is why I was there so long. But Peggy was working with us as well, and part of his job was to do like prepare people for the ceremonies. So when the we did a test event, and because of COVID, we ended up doing the test event with all local riders. So she was one of the local riders, which was actually really cool because this meant that all these local riders got to ride the Olympic course and kind of be involved in some way. So like that was kind of a blessing in disguise, in my opinion, and something that was really fun to do.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
but I mean, she's only 11 now, so this is at least 2 years ago. So she's like 8 or 9 years old, and she was like in the top three and had to do the podium. So it's just a dry run for the main event. So Peggy had to, like, one of the things you have to do, like, people can't wear hats or have certain things on them or have like props or anything. So like she like carries this Barbie around with her like everywhere. So like she's like in the ceremonies tent, he like had to like take the Barbie from her and like store it until she was done doing the podium and all that. And like I'll still joke with him to this day because if you look at her Instagram, you see like Barbies everywhere, which was like this is like Raina was on the forefront before it was cool. Like
Yeah.
now Barbie is like the hot thing, but she was on it way before it was cool. So shout out for that. And but I'll joke with him. I'll be like, I'll see a picture of her online with holding the Barbie. I'll be like, you had one job, Peggy, one fucking job. So I don't know.
Oh man, he's just trying to grab it from her, and she's like, "No." Peggy's like,
Yeah,
"Give,
yeah,
give me the
exactly.
Barbie." From
Exactly.
an
Yeah.
8-year-old, just doing my job. Shit.
You
So
can't
good.
have the Barbie on the podium.
Yeah. Well, you kind
So
of answered my
yeah,
next question. Are you? Do you have any more
the only other one I
young
want to
bucks?
give out, the only one other one I want to give a shout out to, staying in the young Japanese rider theme, is Showa, which I'm sure a lot more people are probably aware of him than anyone. Like he actually just had a clip in the fans video with Dennis in Paris.
Hmm.
But he's like that around that same age, I would say at the oldest 13. And I mean, Showa underscore BMX, and I mean, he's doing like three whips. He's more of
Oh
a
yeah.
park guy, but like, so you kind of have Sosuke on the street scene, and then Kylie's just a style cat, and then Showa is like the park guy, and then, Reina is just like ripping, like just good style and doing candy bars and can't just super good bike control for an 11-year-old girl, it's unbelievable. So,
You
yeah.
win this
So,
question. This is the
yeah,
best, the best answer I've seen to this question, and it's because Japan's just full of talent. But
yeah,
those are all names that we all need to follow. That's sick, dude.
yeah,
So much talent in Japan. So
there is.
You
coming on
answered my
strong.
question. How did you get out there? And it's for the Olympics, obviously. Then.
Yeah, so I was doing, I was at a point in my riding career where the writing was on the wall, like it's winding down. You're trying to think like kind of still making it work, but like helping my buddy out in the wood shop sometimes and, trying to judge in some events to get some other income and things. And, so kind of piecing it together. But again, as a 37, 38-year-old professional BMXer, you're like, that your time's
Your days are
kind of up
numbered.
and
Yeah.
you're on borrowed time already at that
Yeah.
age, so you're like, all right, like, so I was really kind of just trying to think about, all right, what's next? And then I had been judging a lot of events in general and then judging the UCI events. And then even in the beginning of that process, kind of consulting as they were kind of figuring out the formats and the judging criteria and how all that was going to work. So, kind of fast forward, one day I got a call and said, "Hey, it's not a guarantee, but there might be this job in Japan. If it was offered to you, would you want to move to Tokyo for 2 years?" And I was like, "I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but let me sleep on it just to make sure." And like, I called back the next day. I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. If it's a thing, like let's do it." So I mean, I feel like that's kind of like
Yeah.
that was like what I was waiting for. I didn't know what it would be, where it would be, when it would be, but I feel like I was trying to plug myself in and just, be involved in enough different things in enough different ways that like I could still work in BMX. That was my hope at least,
Yeah.
So when this came up, it was like, I mean, I was happy to move to Japan, but also it was scary, but I was like, I can't, this is what I've been waiting for. I can't be like, oh, well, no, I like the idea of this job, but I want to do it in Philadelphia. It's like, no,
Yeah.
like, let's go. We're going to Tokyo. So, yeah.
What was it like moving to Tokyo? That's so nuts. Like, just up your whole life, and you got to move and live in Japan where you don't know the language. I assume you didn't speak Japanese before you moved there.
No, not before. And now I'm okay now, but
You know how to say hi
still
at
not.
least,
No,
or yes.
that's pretty easy. That's an easy one, yes. But I can carry some simple conversations and get by. But yeah. Um, but yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was an exciting venture. I mean, I was looking forward to it. I mean, one, I was again, like with your career expiring, like you feel like you're trying to hold on to something that's dying in a sense. So to have like a new challenge and feel like I was working towards something that like a goal that I could like not only just that specific goal, but also that experience could build on new things. It's going to
Hmm.
give me an experience in a realm that I've never had, which can lead to the next thing. So at that point, I felt like I was starting to grow something instead of just watching something die, which to me was really exciting. And I also like to travel. Um, I felt kind of stagnant a little bit, like just I didn't know what was next, and just I was kind of felt no inspiration necessarily. So I was like, this is great. Like I can't wait to like tackle this task and meet new people and ride new spots and experience a new culture. So I kind of embraced it like a
Hell yeah.
hundred percent.
What do you
And
think is
then
what sticks out to you culture wise moving there? Like, did they have an apartment set up for you, or did you have to figure out your own housing? And like, what was the biggest culture shock of moving there? It's so not.
yes,
I'm trying to put myself in your shoes of like, all right, you got to move to Tokyo for a job. It's like, what, dude? That's nuts.
so with the apartment, it wasn't too bad. Like they just set me up like it. They don't like provide the housing, but they set you up with an age. I mean, it's just like a regular job. They pay you a salary, and just like you would anywhere. They pay you a salary, you pay your rent. So, but they set me up with an agent that helped me find an apartment. So yeah, I mean that's a relatively uneventful story, but yeah, just like um, yeah, just went and looked at
Yeah,
apartments
I
and
got
picked
an
one out.
apartment.
Yeah, so, yeah, nothing that exciting there, but as far as like the culture, I think it was um, right away the language. You're any country you move to that has a different language, but I think one of the things that just stands out is just how kind of polite and clean and orderly the country is as a whole. So that was certainly something that I noticed immediately and enjoyed. I mean, whether it's like you're going down the escalator, like everybody's always going to stand to the right so people can pass on the left. If like people are getting on the train, if you're in France like I am now, or you're in the USA, people are just going to cram in and bumping into each other. They're going to let you get out. They're going to come in like in an orderly fashion.
Huh.
No one puts trash anywhere. Like I remember even, as an American, I just like had a piece of trash one of the early days, and I was like, like there's no trash cans, and like one of my first instincts was to be like annoyed by it, and then I was like, wait, like, and that's just their culture. Like if you have trash, you keep it with you until there's a place to put it. Like
Huh.
I feel like
Yeah.
if you were in New York City and there was no trash cans, people would be like, well, what am I supposed to do? There's no trash cans, and they would probably just throw it on the ground. Like it's not my fault. They should provide a trash can. But
Yep.
like it doesn't work that way there, and even like every park has a public bathroom that just stays clean and nice. Like imagine if in New York City you had a public bathroom, just it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason, the people are just like really respectful and just really take care of things there. Like it's like a more of a community based mindset, and they're really respectful of that. And then, um, and I think like on a different note, like the BMX world really helped me like meet friends really quickly. Like I met Peggy and my friend Hiroshi are both like two of my best friends now in the world. Like not just like good Japanese, like I talk to them all the time still, and like it's like they're two of my closest friends now in general, not just like, oh yeah, those guys I know in Japan. So um but like Hiroshi I met through Chad DeGroot, who is like a kind of like a mid-school flatlander, and he does like a company over there called 430 and has a shop called Decade Shop, which like, but he does mostly does like clothing, apparel, and stuff for his
Cool.
brand 430. And then obviously Peggy we talked about, but I met Peggy through Ben Lewis, who was like, oh, you got to meet him, and like so then like it was perfect because like I kind of had like they were like my first two groups of friends, and it was really great because right away you have the BMX connection. So obviously Peggy's a street rider, and so there's an easy connection there. And then Hiroshi grew up watching like standard style cats and stuff. So we like grew up watching the same videos. Probably fast forward the different parts because he was a flatlander, so I probably fast forwarded all the parts he watched. But 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 like just easy. And then like I feel like Peggy and that whole crew, they're like they just want to ride all the time and drink street beers and like that kind of atmosphere. So like if I just wanted to go ride and have that kind of vibe, it was like I'd link up with them. But then Hiroshi was more down to just do anything. So we'd like, go out to dinners and go to karaoke together. And then it's like, or go to a baseball game. And he was just like more up for those kind of things that like maybe Peggy and
Yeah.
that crew weren't up for. So it was like, kind of nice to have two different connections that because I like to do kind of a little bit of everything. So
Yeah.
it was nice
How old
to
is
kind
that?
of
Makes me think Peggy's younger and Hiroshi's older because he's down to go to a baseball game or whatever other things. But like the younger dudes are always like, let's just go ride. What's
yeah,
why don't you want to go ride right now?
like even like you'd be like, oh, let's go to the bar. Like after we'd get done the session, be like, let's go to the bar and have a beer. And they'd be like, no, we're gonna go to 7-Eleven and get a beer, and we're gonna sit on this curb and drink
Yep.
it. Like, all right,
Street beers, baby.
okay. But yeah, no, Peggy's in his mid 30s, I think. So he's a little younger than me. And then Hiroshi's like a few years older than me. So like in his I'm 43. So Hiroshi's probably 46 or something. Peggy, I'm guessing 35 ish, somewhere in there.
That's
So
that's pretty clutch though that you got to like the BMX connection is huge, moving somewhere new, and then you can have that friendship and not feel alone in this foreign world, which is kind of nutty to think about. What was the actual work like? Was it 9 to 5? You go into an office or like what? How was
yes.
it
So
adjusting to working for the Olympics?
yeah. So I mean, it's definitely like more of a 9 to 5 type of role. Your hours are kind of flexible and stuff. But yeah, I mean, for for all intents and purposes, like it's 9 to 5 office job. You're in front of a computer most of the time. Um,
Like
and
give me a day. Just give me a pick a imagine a random day back back living in Tokyo and like what your day looked like from waking up to, do you take a train? Do you ride your bike to this office? What's the office like? Like, you know, paint a picture
Yeah.
for me, dude.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to be in Tokyo.
In Tokyo, I lived close enough to the office that I rode my bike there every day. Um, so that was nice. And that was actually one of the things I was hoping for when I picked out the spot, the way my commute was easy. But yeah, so I would ride my bike there. And then, I mean, it's like a giant office tower, like a skyscraper, like 40 floors or something like that. And, you know, we had offices on however many floors. I think like in total, there's probably like 4,000 people working at like Tokyo 2020. So to
Wow.
working for, because they're working for all the sports, you know, so you have like, so I work for the sport department. So I worked specifically for BMX freestyle and then had a, eventually, like when I started, it was just me and then eventually like hired a team that worked under me as we got closer to the event. And then you have like all different like functional areas, which are, you know, transportation, food and beverage, venue infrastructure, like, and the list goes on and on and on, like sports presentation, the list just keeps going. And you as a sport work with those different functional areas to essentially organize your entire event. So, you know, like you're working with transportation to make sure the shuttles pick people up at the right times and drop them off at the right times. You're working with food and beverage to make sure you have the right number of meals at the right times. You know, you're working with sports presentation to make sure the audio is going to be right and where the MC is going to stand and when he's going to talk and when he's not going to talk. And you know, so you're
So many
working with,
moving pieces that could go wrong, dude. That's crazy.
yeah, you know, you're working with like OBS, which is the Olympic Broadcasting System, which like, you know, they have to work with you to figure out where they can have their camera positions and all these different, yeah. So it just, yeah, that goes on and on and on. But these are you're basically event planning. So that's what the job is, event planning. So
Yeah. All right. Before we move on, I just have a visual. Are you walking into the building with your bike, or are you locking it up outside, or do you take the elevator up in this big business building with your bike?
so I would put it outside, but for the most part, like there's no crime in Japan. So like I would lock it up outside, but truth be told, like probably didn't even need to lock it up and it would still
Damn,
be there.
that's a culture
Yeah.
shock right there, dude.
Yeah.
Be checking every five minutes. Like, is it still there? Okay. Have you had bikes stolen before?
Um, it's been a while, but yeah, I have.
It's
I have.
the
I
worst feeling.
actually, all right, I'm gonna tell this story. I, I don't think Mueller knows this story. So at one point in Japan, I thought this is an admission right now. So
Let's go.
at one point, I left my bike outside of the office. I didn't lock it up, right? I I forget what we were doing, but we went drinking and I rode the bike like or walked the bike. Basically, I put the bike somewhere where I normally don't put it. And I went drinking and then I went home that night and left my bike somewhere random. I basically forgot where I put the bike. And I thought it was stolen because I thought it was the same place I always put it. And then I so I got a new bike, built a new bike, and I think like a week or two later, like someone pointed out like, oh, there's a bike over there that looks like a BMX bike, like someone rides, and like, and I was like, wait a minute, and then like stuff started like coming back together for me, and I walk like down the street, and I just see my bike with like a rusty chain and rusty bolts, and I'm like, oh my god, like it all started coming back to me. So I ended up, yeah, so then I had two bikes, and in the end, I ended up giving that bike to the Motor Bunker guys to do a giveaway with Fit. So, Chris, I'm sorry, but I tried to make up for it by doing a giveaway of the bike
It
and
all worked out.
promoting Fit in a way. So, here's my confession, and I tried to make good in it. But I'm sorry, I made you give me a new bike for no reason. But nobody stole it. The
Yeah.
good thing is nobody steals in Japan, and that is still confirmed because I thought my bike was stolen and it
For
wasn't.
weeks. That's amazing, dude. The only
It
person
might have
that
been a
could
week
steal
or
a bike
two. I
from
don't
Van
remember
Homan
now.
is Van Homan. He
Oh,
stole a
that's
bike from
embarrassing.
yourself.
That's embarrassing.
Oh, that's
That's pretty
great.
embarrassing.
Happens to the best of us, man.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
uh,
Oh,
well, that must have been
shit.
a fun party night. That makes me wonder, because like, I mean, shit, you've been doing it for a long time and living the BMX travel lifestyle, and I got a little taste of it for a couple of years of like traveling and partying, and there's some good parties. Is there any podcast friendly party stories you're willing to share? Anything that pops into mind?
Nothing too outrageous, but I mean, I just loved going to karaoke when I lived in Japan.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
they're like their karaoke vibe is like very different. Um, like there's one local, they call them snack bars, which are basically those like hole in the wall, um, like typical Japanese or Asian bars that you would think of. Like, you know, you kind of have like the small streets with like just bar, and they're like there's really just enough room for you to barely squeeze behind the stools, and maybe you can fit 15 people max in one of these places, you know. So one of my favorite spots was like to hang out and go to places like that was in Sanjinjaya, um, and you know, it was a kind of just outside of Shibuya, which is so a little bit less of a touristy area. And me and Hiroshi would go there all the time, and just to the point where we're like local at certain spots. And yeah, I just like to drink whiskey and sing songs. And
Hell
like
yeah.
it's not like where you like we're used to, where you stand up on a stage and karaoke. You just kind of like pass the microphone around and you just sing wherever you're sitting. And they'll have like a, you know, screens obviously with the TV. And this one actually had like naked women that had like pixels, like they had pixels on her. And then like after you finish your song, like the pixels would like pop off, and the better you sang, the more naked she got. And then you would get like a score. You would get a score at the end, like to rank how well you sang. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I love just
That sounds
I had
amazing,
like
dude.
yeah, I just had this one little corner. I just loved singing, and then you know, you just meet random people and talk to them, and that's when like I feel like my Japanese started getting better, where I could like carry on some basic conversations. And yeah, I don't it just yeah, just a fun vibe. I like feels like an escape from the world, kind of, you know. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I want to go to Japan so bad. How much is a flight there? 2 grand?
Yeah, right now they're pretty expensive. Like last I was looking, because I was actually checking it, trying to maybe go in December sometime, and they were like 1,500 or something. But yeah,
It's got to be
they're
worth it.
not.
Like, I
Yeah, it's
I would love to get
100%
out
worth
there
it.
and meet those dudes that you're talking about. Meet Peggy and go ride some like spots, dude. Let's talk about the spots. Is it all just pedaling distance? Like, because the Japan videos that I see, I'm just like, dude, it doesn't even seem like real life with all the spots. Like,
Yeah, so there's tons of different stuff, and like you said, like maybe Peggy and Dice K like typically ride different stuff than more like kind of animal jib
right?
kind of
Yeah.
style, you know. And like I got really into like looking for more like transition bank kind of spots, and there's like a mecca of that kind of thing because of all the playgrounds. So that's why, like, if you watch that edit that I did from Japan, it's mostly like playground clips. And so I started by just exploring my neighborhood and things like that. And then maybe those guys showed me a couple spots. But then, like, I'm actually pretty proud of the fact that at least 50%, if not even up to 75% of the spots that are in that edit, I found myself.
Nice.
So, like, I was actually like showing those guys spots in Japan, which is pretty cool. Like, hey, I found a new one. Like, let's go to this. But like one of the setbacks of these playground spots is like um they get covered in kids, so you have to go ride them really early. So I was waiting for someone to just like knock on my door and arrest me, because I'm this 40-year-old man, 40-year-old white
Yes.
man living in Tokyo. And I would constantly be Googling children's parks near me. Like, so I'm like, but like I would find like tons of good spots, and I would like search different areas with like Google Maps and find these playgrounds, and then I would just go on rides by myself, like on my Fairdale, and check them out. And like sometimes it'd be like, oh, there's no run up, or oh, it's not as good as it looked. But then other times they would be complete gold, and then I would like talk to those guys, and then we would go back really early in the morning. Like we would take the first train and be at the spot at sunrise to like to
Nice.
ride it and film and get the clips and stuff that are in that edit. So
That
um
sounds awesome.
that was and that was good too. I was glad we were like officially working on a project at some point, because before we were officially working on a project, it was really hard to get those guys out of bed that early to go ride a spot. So
Oh
a
man.
lot of times when we would actually go to them, like I would be waking up and they just wouldn't go to bed. They would
Mm-hmm.
just ride all night and then meet me in the morning. Like,
End the session going to film van. That sounds like a good
yeah,
plan. I was on that
exactly.
tip for a little bit. I did a video where it was only at night in Arizona. It's obviously hot, but we would start riding at 8 p.m. and then there was nights where we didn't stop until, the sun's up, and
Mm.
that's a weird feeling. I couldn't do that to myself now with the sleep schedule and fucking, I value sleep too
Yeah, I'm not.
much.
I'm not really a nighttime rider. I don't. It's been a long time since I've liked to ride at night. I mean, of course, sometimes if a crew is going out and it's just a fun like, but usually even if I'm riding at night, I'm more just riding to join the crew and enjoy the atmosphere than I am to actually
It's
ride
hard.
myself.
You can't
Yeah,
see shit.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Especially like 43-year-old eyeballs. They don't work as well.
how are you physically and, I guess, yeah, like, are you healthy and happy and healthy and all the things? How are you?
Yeah, I feel.
How
I,
are your eyes?
yeah,
You got 43
my
year old
eyes
eyes?
actually aren't bad. I don't need glasses yet. At least I don't think so.
Beautiful.
Um, but yeah, I feel good. Like obviously you can feel the age and the years of BMX sometimes, or I can feel the difference of like you're working every day, and I probably only ride on average once a week now. Like so it's like I'm nervous. I'm gonna film next weekend for like 3 days in a row, and I'm like, can I do 3 days in a row, like
Yeah.
riding all day every day? So we'll see. But yeah, no, I feel good. I'm really happy with like, I still enjoy riding my bike, and I make that a point to still do it regularly. And um I like the work that I'm doing and having the opportunities to live in foreign countries. And um
Life's good.
so yeah, I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities that I have for sure,
Yeah.
and to still
So,
be involved. Yeah.
yeah, speaking of which, I mean, because we've been talking for a couple of weeks now, it feels like, but in the span that we have been talking, you went to the World Championships. You went to Tokyo again? No. Did you?
No, 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 no. I
Um,
didn't. I went to Tokyo maybe like 3 months ago, roughly 3 or 4 months
I was
ago.
gonna say, so like, what are you doing in France? And then tell me about the World Championships that you just went to.
So yeah, the I'm in France for basically the same reason that I was in Tokyo. So I feel like really there's not much more to explain about the job or the work, because it's very similar work. I just go wherever the Olympics goes. So
Okay.
I mean, I have to reapply for the job each time, but my experience obviously gave me the foot in the door to after Tokyo to get the job here in Paris. So I'm doing very similar work, event
Duh.
planning
Okay,
type
so
stuff.
it's Olympics. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
so
that
that's
that
why
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, the Olympics was in Tokyo, now the Olympics is in Paris. So that's why I'm now in Paris. And if like at this point in time anyway, I hope that I'll go to Los Angeles. So, like 20, so maybe I'll be back in States or doing something else for a couple of years. And then maybe I would work in LA for a couple of years if the cards are, again, you
Hell
can't
yeah.
assume or count on anything. It's not like it's not guaranteed. I would have to put my application in and the whole thing. But yeah, I hope that I'll be working in LA as well. So
Dope. That's what's up. And then I mean, separate from the Olympics is the World Championships, yeah?
yeah, so that's just for me. My role at the World Championships was judging. So I judged a lot of events in general, probably since roughly 2012 ish. I started really judging a lot of events. Like one of my first events was X Games stuff. And then, like I said, the UCI started doing the events, and I started judging the UCI World Cups that are like the FIS events essentially. So yeah, I still do that. And so yeah, my job was judging in Glasgow, which was really cool because this event, like, I mean, I've done a lot of events, but this one was actually kind of special because it was the first time that the UCI put the all the world championships together. So it was all the cycling world championships together,
Cool.
which was pretty neat. And like for me it was cool too because I was seeing like people from like all different worlds. Like I've been working on these Olympic projects and working with the UCI. So I'm seeing like people that work on like road cycling that I'm friends with and like people that work for the UCI that I'm friends with. And then I'm seeing obviously the people that work more specifically on like the UCI end of like BMX freestyle specifically. I'm getting to see like, the other judges, like, like Marcus Wilkie, Dave Dillawar, like Hank, Pokey, Christie, like the whole crew over there. So, and then on top of that, like Dig had their like 30-year anniversary party there. So like then I'm seeing like that side of BMX as well. So it was like all these worlds like
That's so
colliding
good.
in the same like atmosphere. Like so
I love that. What was it like getting into judging? Like, what does it feel like to be a judge at, fuck, I mean, that's the highest level, the or not Olympics, the World Championships. And like, what was your, when you first got into it, your first contest ever? What's it? I can't imagine being a judge at some of these things. Like, I just got to go to the real BMX best trick at Rincon, and I was just like, dude, I couldn't
mm.
handle being a judge and picking whatever. Uh, so yeah, what does it feel like to be a judge? And
It
yeah,
can be tough. I mean, obviously, like judging can be very subjective. But I think some of my first judging jobs actually, like Mark Losi asked me to do them first. I don't know. I think I did some dew tours and some like mongoose jams and things, and I feel like he's the one that kind of got my foot in the door. Um, and then I mean, he seemed to always be happy with my work. I mean, I like to think I take it seriously and I want to get it right. And I also feel like, I'm pretty analytical about it. And I also very much try to separate, like just take in all aspects of the riding and separate, like, I think it's important to separate your favorite run from what you think is the best run. Like
right,
sometimes my favorite run of the day, I gave 16th place, and I was like, I personally, that was my favorite run, but it wasn't, if you take in all the criteria, it's not the best run.
right.
So I think it's important to be able to do that as a judge. And I think like anything too, it comes with practice. The more you do it, the more you're able to, because you have to process a lot of information really quickly. So it kind of have like shorthand notes with like marks for certain mistakes and things like that. So you can, if you need to flip back and you only have, less than 60 seconds to give a score, you can kind of compare really quickly and
Huh.
reference things. And
Shorthand.
um,
So what's something you would write for like a mistake? What's your shorthand?
well, like, all right, so if you had like a TW, but you put a foot down, I would just have like, or you did a tail whip, but you put a foot down, I would have a TW with like a little X, like
Huh.
at the top corner, and things
Yeah.
like that. And then, um, yeah, that's
So
kind
like
of the basic. But
as
yeah,
the rider's going, you write TWX, and then the next trick that they land BS not X. Like, are you writing down every trick that
yeah,
they do?
yeah. I put down pretty much every trick. Like I'll just, like I have, and like that's when I know you're getting creative. Like if you do a trick that I don't have a shorthand for, I'm like,
Nice.
oh,
Yeah.
track. Like what do I do for this one?
Start spelling it out.
creativity, creativity points. I have to spell this whole word. Like so, um, yeah, like, but yeah, just whatever, like a flare or that FL, and you just like, I just kind of just, I'm not even really looking at the paper. Like, you might glance down once in a while and then the flat bottom just to make sure in a straight line, but you're just kind of flowing with these
That's so
little
interesting,
shorthand
dude.
codes you have. And then
Yeah.
like it makes it really easy. And then later, like if someone puts a foot down or they case, like I have marks for like all those little things. And then even if they just like, maybe someone's like, I might put something like good line or something like that quick to like show that they were like using the course in a unique way, or I might just make like a check if they're like doing dead airs. Like if someone just air jumps a box, airs, like, and it's like, oh, they're kind of lost, you kind of have, yeah, you just kind of have little codes
So
for
interesting.
everything so you can
Yeah.
quickly reference it. And, with how high the level is, especially at like those types of events now, and like it's insane. So just do your best to process all that information and then make sure you're ranking everyone
Yeah.
as best you can, and then I even like, I don't do it for every event now, but I do it for some, and I definitely did it especially a lot when I was first starting. I mean, I'll go back and rewatch the contest and like pause and like basically rejudge it and see if I like felt like I was off at all. I'll be like, there's been times where I was like, man, all right, like maybe I overscored that guy a little bit because he did three hammers, but then the rest of it was all turn downs and no handers. So I got caught up in those hammers, and maybe I overscored them, or like maybe I underscored this guy, or like so like by studying that, you get better from there. And I like to think that even the goal is that even if one of us is off, there's five of us. So a lot of times even if I felt like I was off, he ended up where he should have been because the other four, and then maybe someone else was off, but the other four, so not saying it, again, it's subjective. We have to have scores in really fast. It's not an exact science. I don't think it ever should be. Um, but yeah, we work hard to try to do the best
That's so
job we
bomb.
can.
Is there a
Yeah.
different like so like you come in as a judge, does the contest just say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 100, you're gonna rank these riders, or are they giving you like criteria? Do each like does Do Tour have a different thing than the X Games? Like where does uh the structure for what you're doing as a judge come from? Is it like from the top down type thing, or do they bring you in to be, the expert and whatever? I'm
Well,
sure
again, I
there's
mean,
some difference.
at this point, there is like a pretty clear criteria for like the UCI events. But again, we kind of consulted to help them create that criteria in the beginning. So it's, you know, um, it kind of came from us originally, and then like, I guess one of the things that might differ from, again, any event can dictate its own criteria. I mean, like I'll go to events like Simple Session or something, or even X Games, and they want to make it a point to say like, hey, this isn't a UCI event. We want it judged this way, and which is great. Like not every event should be the same, or the same structure or format or exact way. But I mean, like I guess something that's like at the UCI events, like crashing is a pretty detrimental to your score. So like you could have the craziest run and you crash on something insignificant in the final seconds, and that's going to drop your score by 20 to 30 points,
Yikes. Yeah.
regardless. So like, it's pretty much like a write-off if you crash at any point, regardless of what else you did, which is, I think something that I think the riders actually, I mean, sometimes there'll be like judging controversies or whatever. It's inevitable. It happens. I've seen it happen at every event, like at some point, regardless. So, but I think the riders actually like and understand that fact. Like, yeah, if we can't put together with the level they're at now, like if you can't put together a full 60 seconds and still be on your bike at the end of it, it's kind of like, all right, it's not good
Yeah.
enough to beat those other guys. So,
Yeah. Which,
yeah,
dude, you can't emphasize how freaking good those dudes are. Like
yeah,
especially I think park riding is like those dudes are just built different. You have to be able to like do that run over and over and over and over again. Like they would
yeah,
session the flip triple whip that they're doing. Like that's just a
yeah,
regular Tuesday. It's just like what?
yeah.
Like I can't relate to that shit at all, dude. It's
No,
so
it's
nuts.
absolutely absurd. Like, I mean, they're real athletes now. Like, it's
Yeah.
insane. Like, they're actually athletes, and I think it's really cool, because you see, like, you kind of look back on, like, someone like Dave Mira. I feel like there was a time where, like, he was the only one that had that type of mindset. And now I feel like what you're seeing is there's a lot of riders that enjoy competing in that way and have that type of mindset. And now there's an outlet for them, and I think it's pretty rad that there's like a consistent series and like something for them to work towards and for them to compete in, and just see that progression in that realm, it's
Yeah. When
yeah.
you're watching them, can you feel it in your body? Like because you've ridden for so long, so you see what they're doing, and you can just like feel what that tail. Like even just sitting here thinking about a tail whip right now, I've never done a tail whip in my life, but I know what it feels like. Like so
Yeah.
when you're watching, taking your shorthand, you kind of like feel it as you go. That's a stupid question.
I've never really thought about that, but like I in a way I guess I see what you're saying, because like there's some tricks that I see like that I've never done, but like you can imagine how they, like, for example, like a front flip is something that doesn't look natural to me, and I have no desire to ever do that trick. It doesn't look fun, but the front flip flare, that looks so fun to me, because like you're the way that they flip, and like you're just like coming straight in, like almost like you're diving into a swimming pool, like the way that like when you're doing the flare, but you know what I'm saying, like
Yeah, I know
like
exactly what you're
a
saying.
front flip seems like you're like going against that, like you're like landing and you're like that, but
Yeah,
like when they do the fronty flares, it's like whoosh, swish, it's like just
looks
it
smooth.
looks, yeah, it looks like a fun feeling. And it's like there's like certain things that I don't have any interest, I've never done, but I have no interest in ever doing. And then there's other things where I'm like, damn, I would love, I'm never going to do that trick, but I would love to feel what that feels like,
Yeah, right.
So just depends.
What's something that you never learned that like another, not the front flip flare, but like thinking from, video parts or whatever, what's something that always kind of eluded you, if there is any?
Hmm.
What's something that you couldn't do that you wish you could?
Good question. Let's, so I'm gonna give you like a couple obscure ones,
Hit me with them.
that were just like on my dream trick list. And I actually tried to tell Mickey Fleck that he needs to get one of these done for me, because he's been on a Derek Duster
Oh
kick
yeah.
lately. But like one dream trick that I always had, I basically always thought of like tricks that I could do. I always ran 2 pegs, but I didn't want to run 4 pegs. And that's like one of the reasons that the Duster grind got created in the first place. Cause like, all right, how can we do a crooked grind without 4 pegs? And um, there's a longer story to that, but I think Scotty Kramer just posted something about that, so you can check that out. Go find that on Scotty's page somewhere if you want the whole Derek Duster story. But anyway, so I wanted to learn basically like a toboggan Derek Duster, because you're like already like leaning way back when you do that trick. So
Yeah.
like imagine if you just like hop, and as you're hopping, you take your hand off and like grab the seat, and then you just like dip it down as like the front wheel swings down, and then you like pull it back up as you're coming off the rail, and like
Huh.
grab going off the rail.
I've
So
never
that's
thought
like
about that.
one.
That's a good one. That's a damn
Yeah.
good one.
So that was like one dream trick that I never did. And then another dream trick that I never did, kind of in the same spirit of trying to figure out ways to do 4 peg tricks without 4 pegs, is I always dreamed about one of two combinations. So one of which is pretty obscure. Like, so I always, one would just be like a half bar spin to crooked grind to half bar spin out.
Huh. Yeah.
Um, and I feel like, so then the second one is in the same spirit, because I feel like, in my opinion, like to do a half bar spin trick, at some point you have to end up with the bars back to normal in order for it to be like completed. So like I used to always do no footed half bar spins, still even have recently, like as recently as that Tokyo edit, I stuck one in there. But so I imagine like even if you couldn't get the half out, do like half bar to crooked grind, and then do like a no footed half bar spin down a set of stairs. It's like a combo that I always had in my mind. So like
There's
a
still time,
couple,
Van. We could do
yeah.
this. That's
So both
awesome.
pretty obscure, some pretty obscure moves. Like
Mm-hmm.
as far as I'm trying to think if there's anything like more. What's a more like conventional trick that I always wanted to do that I've never learned is 360 no footed can-cans. I've always wanted to do that, and I've never. I always had trouble taking my feet off during threes, so even like 3 no footers were a little tough for me. And I guess I just never put the proper time in. But I would love to do, because I would do them like topside. So I would love like someone like Chris Doyle or Tom Justice. You see them doing it. I would love to do a proper one
Yeah.
like that. So,
That shit looks like it
yeah.
feels pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just jumping stuff, dude. Like you're a good jumper, and that's that's got to be the purest, most Best feeling in BMX is just jumping something and feeling good about it. Which makes me think about the origins of you, and what was your what what were your parents like? What's your childhood like? How did you what's your story from the beginning? Like, how
Um,
were you into sports? Why do I feel like you played sports?
no, not really. I'm from a pretty standard middle class suburban family. I grew up in Pennsville, New Jersey, which is like a plant town, like a chemical, like DuPont chemical plant was there. So that's what I think most of the people that were originally based there were there for. That's why one of my grandfathers moved from Virginia originally, was to work at that chemical plant. And then
Okay,
my dad worked there for 40 years. And um, now it's kind of not going so well there. But anyway, that's another
that's the
story.
nature
But
of those type of towns, dude. Like, it's like there
yeah,
for the business, and then the business moves away or gets outsourced or something, and then the whole town is just wrecked.
yeah. So yeah, I like I said, typical middle. Like when I was young, you asked about sports. Like when I was younger, I played like soccer and baseball and that kind of stuff. But actually, once I got into BMX, I started riding BMX when I was like 12 years old, and I remember being like 13 and I was still playing baseball. And I remember just like standing out in the outfield like one afternoon, like just being like, this sucks. I just want to go ride right now. Like, why am I at this baseball field? Like, I want to go ride my bike. So then, I told my dad, like, I just I want to quit baseball and ride BMX. And I at that point I had like started racing BMX. So I think that was easier for my dad too, because it was a kind of a structured thing that he could be involved with and feel like I was being constructive. Um, maybe if at that point I'd just been like, I just want to go ride, I just want to go grind these feeble edges, like he might have been
Yeah.
like, a little concerned or like worried. But I think because um part of it was that way, it was like easier for us to like, kind of do that together and have that like father son kind of bond. And then like this like brings up two stories that I'm trying to figure out if I already talked about in other podcasts. So I don't know like if, but
Fuck it.
just rip it. Yeah, people forget anyway, don't they?
Fuck it.
So the first one for the rate like the racing thing, like um I I started getting into BMX. We kind of found out about it through like one of my friend's older brothers used to ride BMX in the like mid 80s, and we started riding like 92. So we had all these like BMX magazines from like 85 probably. And that was all we had as a reference point. So we were just going out, jumping curves, building little jumps in the woods, whatever. And and then we would even like look at the bikes and stuff in this magazine to like being like, oh, I want that bike. But we didn't know this magazine's like 7 years old. Like these bikes aren't even made anymore, but we're like, still using them. And then finally, this kid, his name was Danny Eckert, who was kind of like the local hero at the time. He had some jumps in his side yard, and he could do tabletops, and he was racing BMX. So that's how I found out about the track, the Mulligan Hill Monster Racetrack in Mulligan Hill, New Jersey, was from him. And so I told my dad about it, and I was like, hey, I want to go race BMX. And my dad was like, all right, well, you find out. Well, first of all, my dad came from like a boat racing. He used to race boats back in the day. So he had like a boat racing culture. My grandfather too actually used to race boats. My grandfather actually set like some boat racing world records like in the 50s,
No
which is pretty
shit.
cool.
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually check out like if there's we did a while back, we did a bell piece with my dad and my grandfather. It's called From the Beginning. So it's like got some pretty cool stuff of like my grandfather and
That
my
sounds
father
awesome.
racing boats and like talking and stuff. It's kind of like a little documentary. But anyways, so my dad came from like a boat racing culture. So I think he was like a little bit like nervous. He knew like what that racing culture like could turn into. But first he's like, okay, get all the information and we'll go race. So I get the phone number. And we're talking about 1992, 93. There's no internet, there's no whatever. So like I'm calling this phone number every second of every day that I have a chance. And like for like a week, nobody's answering the phone, right? I'm on my lunch break at school, going to the payphone, putting quarters in, like calling, nobody's answering, nobody's answering. Finally, on a Sunday, I call and someone answers the phone. And what I discovered later is this phone was in a trailer at the track. And the only time someone was ever answering it was when there was actually a race going on. So that's why like no one was answering it. But I'm ecstatic. Someone finally answers the phone. I'm like, how much is it? You know, what's the address, the directions, that like just get the whole what time, you know, just get the whole spiel, like take it to my dad. Like, so he's like, all right, we'll go race. So then but he also, I think he's still nervous because he knows racing culture and like how it leads to like the national races and traveling and all these things. He's like, we'll go race, but he's like, we're only going to Mulligan Hill on Sundays, you know, because that's when they had their races. And he's like, was like hesitant to be like going to all the other tracks, like, and even New Jersey had other tracks, let alone start branching out. Um, so yeah, so then we finally get to the track and we start racing. Obviously, I love it, and that's, I mean, I think I raced pretty seriously for like 6 or 7 years while I was, but in the meantime, I was still starting to ride street and dirt jumping, and the racing went hand in hand at the same
I
time. I mean,
bet.
I was
Yeah.
learning tricks and that stuff even when I was doing that. So, but then of course, like suddenly, like that snowballed into, I think it only took less than a year. Next thing you know, we're going to like Egg Harbor Township in New Jersey and Huntington County in New Jersey. And then we start going to nationals, we're going to North Carolina, Massachusetts, Georgia. You know, we're going all over, like going to the Grands and like, you know, going for the, you know, seeing how good we can do at nationals and
He
stuff.
called it.
So
How was
yeah,
he
like
about going to that stuff though? Once it came.
he loved it. You know, like
Yeah.
it was like, I think he just knew. I bet if I'm being, it was probably more my mom being scared of it than it was him, because I think like I think that's probably why he was scared of it, because he knew it was in his blood. He knew he couldn't fight it. Like he
Yep.
knew, like he was saying that, but I think he knew deep down, like as soon as we go to this track, like I know we're gonna be going all over the country racing
Yeah.
this bike. Like I didn't know it yet, but I think he knew it. You know,
Yep.
so um,
We're opening a whole can of worms here, son.
yeah, he knew what was
That's so
happening.
rad.
I didn't get it yet, but he already knew. Like, oh, this is gonna be a thing. Like, um, yeah, I mean, he loved it and was super supportive of my racing and my riding in general. So, I think it was a great thing for us to do together, traveling together, and you know, I mean, he was even great. Like, I mean, basically, like my manager, you know, he would know. Like, he's like, hey, you need top three to be the overall points winner, so don't crash trying to get second, you know, like that kind of thing, you know, like he would know
Yep.
all that, where I would just, you know, you're just a kid, you're just like,
I want to go
you know,
fast.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so then like to wrap up this whole story, like the him saying just Mulligan Hill on Sundays, and then ended up traveling all over. Then my life led to me traveling the world through BMX. So then when I was working in Tokyo, actually, I took a picture at the top of the BMX race starting hill, and like with the big Tokyo 2020 logo, it was just like, just Mulligan Hill on Sundays, right, Dad?
Aw,
You know, because like couldn't be like
that's
more opposite,
amazing.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Dude, that's wholesome as shit. I love that.
yeah.
Thanks, Pops.
Yeah.
My dad was very similar with I wanted to quit the basketball team and just do riding, but I wasn't going to race or anything. So he was like, "Are you sure, Robert?" And I was just like, "Yeah. Yeah. I love it, you
Yeah.
know." Who knows
Yeah.
who's sure about anything? What was your biggest like accomplishment within racing?
um I guess my best, so I got like, this doesn't really count because I got like national number one novice title, but that's like it's kind of, it doesn't really count. That's like novice is like the intermediate level, you know. So like
Yeah.
you can race like a year in that level before you get like bumped up to expert. So like the real plates that count are the expert plates. So like where that was good, that was like my first serious year of racing, and I got like that title as like an intermediate. It's like there's a whole group of guys your same age bracket that are way better than you.
Yeah.
So
But you're
it
still
doesn't
number one,
really,
Doug.
yeah. I mean, still number one, but it doesn't really. It has a big star next to it. But
Yeah.
my best expert plate was national 16, I think. Like, so yeah, that was
So
my
that means
best.
16th. I don't know racing shit at all. So that means you were
So
16th
16th in the
in the
nation.
country. Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible,
So
dude. That's awesome.
thank you. No, I mean, I wasn't the best, but I was decent, you
Yeah.
know. So
Hell yeah.
yeah.
What was your first taste of street? Like, who did you watch back then? Like, give me a history lesson. Who should I be researching? You know, because it's one thing to go back and watch Van Homan parts, but who was Van Homan watching? And then what do I got to do to get caught up on BMX history from that time?
Yeah, so I can't even remember exactly how I like realized that like grinding was a thing, you know, but at some point pretty early I saw something somewhere like who knows, that could have been, I might be totally making this up, but I want to say like it could have even been someone like Keith Trainer from like in like an old BMX Plus or something, feeble grinding something, you know, and I was like, oh, you can
Just
do
like,
that? Like
whoa, you could do that?
so then a I had an old thread on peg from a Paragrind Performer that I had that was one of my first bikes like in the 80s. Like before I even like officially rode BMX, you know, it's just like my BMX bike. And so I take this thread on peg and I thread it onto my race bike and go out and try to start doing feeble grind. So you can imagine how that went. Like the peg just blows off the bike and like next thing you know, like I'm destroying bikes because I'm like trying to use pegs on race bikes with 3/8 axles.
Yeah.
Like, and it just like, I mean, even the best freestyle axles at the time weren't really built to handle like grinding street and stuff. So then at some point I like ended up having, I was just killing my bikes. So at some point my dad like helped me get another bike. So I had like a street slash dirt jumping bike and a race bike. Like at the peak of this, I think at one point I had like a cyclecraft and a dirt bike, but probably at the peak of my like having two bikes, I had an S&M dirt bike and an S&M Challenger. So the S&M Challenger was for racing and the S&M dirt bike was for like street and trails.
Nice.
And but even then I remember like it was still just 3/8 axles on on the rear. So like you've got, and they weren't made as well as they are now. But at the time, like Standard made the best axles that you could get at the time. And I would like save up my money. Like I had a paper route at one point, and then later I worked at a supermarket for a while. But like I would I would just buy like 3 or 4 axles at a time because I would go through them that quickly. Like they would just,
Nice.
you know, at half the time your peg is just bent like that, you know,
Yeah.
because like of course too, like I mean the products weren't good, but to make it even worse, like when you're learning this kind of stuff, you're not very finesseful. You know, you're
Yeah.
grinding super raw ledges and just bashing on them, like you know. So yeah, it was just so brutal on the bikes. I'm pretty sure at one point I had a cyclecraft that I was grinding with, which is a total race bike, and like because I had like ground through it doing grinds, like I jumped a jump one time and the dropout just
Oh
blew
no.
out, blew right out of the frame. You know,
Shit.
like but
So
yeah, like
part of the game, man. Oh
bikes,
shit.
the kids don't appreciate like the bikes they have now. Like I mean, when you think about 3/8 axles and just like how much we would bend handlebars and forks, and like even before like A headsets, when you'd have the threaded headsets,
Oh
like
yeah.
you know you'd be on the starting gate like, and you'd like go like this to make sure your headset was tight. Like anybody who raced during that area, no, like you would get on the starting hill, put your feet up, and you would, that was just automatic. You'd be like, all right, headsets tight, set them up,
Let's
riders
go.
ready, watch the lights. It was just automatic, you know.
That's a different time, dude. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, it is
Pre
crazy.
and then
Like wedge stems. Like I was still racing when you like, oh, like that's how you're. Do you even know? Have you ever even
I
seen a
I can
wedge
picture
stem?
it in my
Like
head, yes.
yeah,
But
like you
still,
have
I need
the
let me Google it.
yeah
A wedge stem.
yeah. Like
I,
the first time I tried to work on my bike, like I loosened the stem, but I didn't know how it worked. And there's like it's like a wedge
oh
that like
yeah,
connects to the long bolt. That's what like would like wedge up in your forks to hold your
dude.
stem in place.
Yeah.
And like the first time I tried, I like lost that thing like the wedge like dropped down into the forks, and then I was like trying to tighten it, and I didn't understand how the system worked. So I was like, "What's happening? I broke it."
Yeah, it's a different time. You learned on I mean, they're just so fragile, and I guess street riding wasn't popular enough for them to really care about making. What's the other size? 3/8 and then 14 millimeter axles? Is that what it is now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then
I
I
guess you
remember
could. Yeah,
remember when 48 spoke wheels was popular and the triple wall Alex rims. That was like
yeah,
that's the generation that I kind of got into it, and I was like, damn, these
yeah.
are beefy. But you're
I
even
had the
before all
Alex
that.
triple walls.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's when things started to, like before that, there wasn't the parts just hadn't caught up to the riding yet. I mean, that's why it's so impressive when you see some of these photos from the 80s where dudes are just blasting out of concrete bowls, and you're like, I'm like, the craziest part of this is the bike they're doing it on.
Yeah.
And then I think like people started to catch up, like companies like Hoffman and S&M and Standard, they were rider owned companies, so they started to make like address the problems that real riders had because they were real riders. So um and that's when things started getting stronger, and that's when it was almost like popular, like the heavier the better. Bikes just started getting heavier and heavier because people weren't worried about weight. They just wanted something that wasn't going to break every time they rode it.
Yeah.
So, it's like
Yeah.
40 pounds, who cares? Like 50 pounds, who cares? As long as it's not going to come to pieces underneath me.
Yeah. What was the homie's
So,
name that did the solid wheels? Derek? The
oh,
with the
yeah.
fully just metal, like the craziest shit. Dude, it looks
road
like a
on
hundred
road
pound
fulls.
bike. Yeah.
Which
Road full.
road fulls was that? Was that 13?
That
That
sounds
was road
about
fulls
right.
13.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is Derek? No, no, it's not
Nelson?
Nelson, right?
Is it
Is that
Derek
right?
Nelson? I think
I
that's
feel
right.
like that's another person.
Derek Nelson BMX. No, that's him. Inside the
That's
mind.
him. Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
him. Fucking A. It's weird to see him ride a bike that doesn't have the solid wheels. That's cool.
Yeah, I haven't really kept up on him. I don't know. I know he had that park in New York, like that, like kind of like a library slash skate park for a while. I don't know if he still has it or, um,
Yeah, I haven't thought about him in a hot minute, but he's the shit.
yeah.
Looks like he's welding stuff. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
Yeah.
so what was I mean, your story's probably pretty cumbersome. We could do an encyclopedia on you, but I guess tell me the trajectory of your professional BMX career. Like what first sponsor, how did that come up, and walk me through it.
Whew, okay.
Whew. Whew.
Let's see. So, like I said, I started racing. I had like a kind of like a small sponsor through racing, which was like Ace Products, which was done through this guy Andy Curry, which was like Chippendale Bike Shop, which I think they're still kicking ass in New Jersey even to this day. And that was kind of my race days, just a small just discount on parts from a bike shop basically. But um, then when I started to get more into dirt jumping and riding street and stuff, I so when I was going to the races, I at one point I started to enter the DK dirt circuits and stuff. And I didn't know this at the time, but I guess like John Paul Rogers, who ended up being the Schwinn team manager, had always kind of been like paying attention to me. Like he's like saw like potential in me, but I was pretty rough around the edges at the time, and but I would, he saw something and he was kind of kept an eye on me. And then I think 98 or 99. At this point, I was done racing and I was like old enough to like, we went to the Christmas Classic with like my buddies. And at this point, I was actually already riding for Little Devil because, at that point, Little Devil was super small. Like Derek was just doing it out of his grandfather's basement. I would ride the trails that he rode and dug at. And he's like, he liked the way I did turn downs and no footed cans, and was like, hey, you want a few t-shirts? Like, and
Damn,
that
that's
was as much
interesting.
as it was at the time. But um, so then we all took a road trip out to Columbus, Ohio for the Christmas Classic, which was like a big race that they had every year, and they'd usually have a dirt jumping contest at it too. So we're like, all right, we're gonna go hang out, party, and ride in the dirt jump contest. And I ended up like there was like 90 some riders in that event, and I ended up qualifying first and getting like fifth. So I think at that point I kind of started like obviously coming into my own a little bit and like refining some of the rough around the edges aspects that I had to my riding. And then that's when like John Paul came up to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to ride for Schwinn?" And like at first I was actually kind of like weird about it. Like I wasn't sure I wanted to do it because I was like, I don't know, Schwinn, like I don't know if I like these bikes, and like kind of being a little weird about it. But then I went home and I was like even talking to my parents, and they're like, "You're insane. Like they're gonna pay all your travel, they're gonna pay," because at that point it was like, they obviously gave me bikes, and then they paid for all my travel to go to all the events, so any event that I wanted to go to, it was covered, so um and like in retrospect, I'm really, really glad like I didn't turn that down, because at the time it was like, oh, Standard's the cool company, like all these like, it was like the like maybe the domination era, or like um and anyway, like I just thought that was the coolest shit at the
Yeah.
time. And in
Schwinn wasn't
retrospect,
core, but
yeah, like,
yeah.
but like in retrospect, I'm so happy that I did it, because it allowed me to travel and go to events and be part of everything and just get on the radar, just get noticed. And I would go to events, and then I would go with Losi or whoever and shoot Losi Mulligan, shoot photos for Ride or Snap or whatever. And like then suddenly like your exposure just like went to the next level. And like at the same time, we were working on projects, like I was working on projects with Derek, like with Little Devil, like we were working with like Daryl Naw and Derek Adams on Seek and Destroy. So we we at some point that video came out. I'm trying to think like how the timing lined up, because I know there was one. It seems like this wouldn't have been before Seek and Destroy, but maybe it was, because I was kind of like known as a dirt jump kid at that time. But all the while, like, it's not like now where you just post an Instagram clip every day. Like, we stacked up clips for like 2 or 3 years before the video part came out,
Yeah.
So people just saw me at these dirt jump contests, but they didn't know that I rode street.
That you were stacking
So
clips, dude.
like I remember Derek, because Derek had gone on Road Fools 1 like as like the chase car. So like he was like on Road Fools 1, and then like later on I remember Marco from Props, Marco Masai and Chris Rye, they were like, Derek said to them, he knew them, so he's like, "Hey, you should bring this kid on Road Fools," like, and they just knew me as the dirt jump kid. So like, "Oh, can he ride street though?" And he's like, "Yeah, he can ride street. Like, trust me." Like, like, and
Hell yeah.
so I guess I don't know if they saw something or if Derek just convinced them. But then like Road Fools 4 was like my first Road Fools, and I don't know, like it's hard to remember the
How
whole
did that
timeline of
feel?
things.
Yeah. I mean, Seek and Destroy, I just looked it up, came out in 98, and then
Yeah,
Road Fools 4 must have been after?
I
No?
guess I can. It's got to be
When
after,
was
but
Road Fools 4?
I can't. The timeline in my head is not that good.
Uh, I don't even know how to figure it out. First edition of Props Road Fools was released February 1998. So it must have been after.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Road
Road
Fools
Fools 1 was
1
98, so
was
it had to be
98. Yeah.
after. Yeah.
Road Fools 4 was
Yeah.
99 with Mr.
Okay.
Van Homan in there. Dude,
Oh, so Road Fools Full was only 99. So yeah. Okay. So that would make sense. Like maybe, who knows when Derek brought it up? It could have been even just after Road Fools 1 or something. Like. But yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
you get the general point, regardless of how it all fell together. But yeah, I mean, going on Road Fools was amazing. I mean, I watched Road Fools 1, and for me, that was like a game changer. Like watching some of the stuff that Joe and Taj were doing on street felt like it was just taking it to a whole nother place. And it was the first time where I feel like before that, street was almost like not even like its own genre yet. Like it was, but there almost wasn't enough that you could do on street. Like it was like you did the rail or you did the gap,
Right.
but it felt like that Road Fools. Rofels one with all the stuff those guys were doing, like made it seem like its own thing for the first time. You know, it wasn't like something you did on the side. It's like, oh, I'm going to ride the park and I'm going to ride the trails. And then at night, we're going to go manual this flat ledge and grind this rail. But like, that's all you like, that's the two things you could do, right? Like, you
Right.
grind the rail, you manual the ledge, you're done. Like,
Yeah.
and then it was like, oh, I can do it backwards. I can ice pick it. I can gap to it. I can, you know, it seemed like it just started to open up a whole new world. So like seeing Joe do like the gap to rail stuff in that, it was like, for me, that was like, oh shit, like, you know, like this is where we're going. Like, all right,
All right, let's
sign me
go.
up.
Sign me up.
I'm
Fuck
on the
yeah.
train. Let
And indeed you were, man. Indeed you are. Shit, still. All right. So now we're at Road Fools 4. We're still in 1999. What the
oh
hell?
shit. Oh boy. Okay.
Where are you at the
um
turn of the century?
uh let's see. So I feel like things went pretty rapid at some point. So I feel like what, like 99 I think is when I moved out. Either 98 or 99 is when I moved out of my parents' house and I moved into like this house with like four other guys. So it was like five of us. I was like living on the front porch. Like, I mean, a covered, like an enclosed front porch, but like the front porch of this house. My rent was like $80 a month.
80?
Yeah,
Fuck.
we lived in like
That's
not
amazing.
we lived in not the nicest area, and we're going back 23 years. So like
Still.
collectively, like
Yeah.
my rent was $80 a month to live on this front porch. And I like practically begged these guys to like let me live there, because it was like, you know, I was at that age by that point. I'm like, oh, I want to, you know, I want to live in like, you know, BMX house, and I want to
Yep.
just go ride every whatever. And by that point, I think I was getting $300 a month from Schwinn, and I had maybe a couple $1,000 saved up from working at the supermarket, because I was living at my parents and like I was able to save some money. So I moved out, and just as I was like starting to get worried about like, all right, I'm gonna have to get another job, like what am I gonna do? Then I started making like $1,500 a month from Schwinn. Like at that point, I had like my I kind of went from being like this up and coming kid to like pretty quickly, like Seek and Destroy came out. Maybe I'd even won a Nora Cup by then, like the first Street Rider of the Year Nora Cup. So like things like escalated pretty quickly.
Van Homan
And
was
then
born, you know?
yeah, I had arrived. No, so then like I started making $1,500 a month, which like I said, my rent was $80 a month, so I
Yeah,
was doing just fine.
that'll cover it.
And then we moved into another house with like the same crew minus one, but like a little bit nicer house. And then I think my rent might have went up to like 120 or 160, somewhere in there. I can't remember
You
exactly,
can
but it was
cover
still
it.
very, very cheap. And but then at that point, like I don't even know exactly, but like I started making more money. Like I just like all my sponsors collectively, like next thing you know, I had a year, maybe it was 2001 or 2002. So like very quickly, I went from making $300 a month to having a year where I almost made 100K in the year. I made like 90 some K that year. And I was like a 21-year old kid, you know, and to this day, it's like the best year I've ever had in any job. Like I don't
Yeah,
think I've like made that had done that good at any as a BMXer or outside of being BMXer. I don't think I've never hit 100K in a year. Like
yeah.
so, or at least not on my taxes anyway. So and
For the record.
no, what's that?
For the
No,
record,
it's
IRS.
that's not actually true. But everything's on the up and up. But anyway, I but I was a kid, like, and I didn't even like care that I had this money. Like it was just like piling up in the bank, because I just went and rode my bike every day. I lived in a house with three other guys paying at most $150 a month rent. And my cost of living was so ridiculously low that like, and then at some point, like I like, I started dating a girl and we had like gotten like a little more serious. And like at some point we had a conversation and she's like, you have $50,000 in the bank? I was like, yeah, is that weird? Like, she's like, what the fuck? Like, like I'm just like, like, and she's like, you should buy a house. Like, buy a house. And I was like, all right, let's buy. Like, okay, I'll buy a house. Like, so then I like feel like I had this like probably inspired by like Fuzzy Hall and like other guys of the time, like having kind of these like kind of fun houses, like
Yeah.
they've got jumps in the backyard, they've got like video game, whatever. Like, so, with a 21, 22, I think I bought the house when I was 22. And the first thing I bought for it, the first piece of furniture I bought for it was a Miss Pac-Man machine. So,
Nice. Let's go.
so that just shows you like my mentality.
Yeah.
So I buy a Miss Pac-Man machine. I call Aaron Bostrom and Burley Matt. I'm like, hey, I need you guys to come out here. We're building ramps in the garage. So then like we like these are like my priorities, and then
Yeah.
like but I bought a house, like it was in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and it was kind of like outside, like pretty far outside of Philly or like anything, but like I wanted something that was like sensible cost, and I wanted like land and have enough space around me so I could build ramps or trails or whatever I wanted to build. And then I wanted it big enough because I was like, I want a dark room, I want a game room, I want a music room, I want an office. Like, like I'm just
Yes.
like a kid with too much money having this like just fun
Doing
house
it.
dream, which I did. Like, I had a hot tub, like a 32-foot wide, 6-foot mini ramp in the side yard, like a game room where we would just like play poker and Miss Pac-Man all the time, like guitars in the basement, like the whole 9 yards. Like,
Hell yeah.
so definitely like living the dream as like a kid. Um, yeah.
That's
And
incredible.
then, but I like, yeah, I don't know. Like,
There's a
I
but.
guess,
What's the but? But I like what happened?
no, I don't know. Like then I eventually I sold that house, which I did pretty good on that house. And I bought a house in Jersey, like where I grew up. And then that's when I opened 2x4. So I put like a huge down payment on the new house in Jersey. And then I probably like 120 grand after I sold that house, like from it. So I put like 80 grand down on the new house and then used another 40 to start my shop that I had for like 6 years, 2x4.
Hell yeah.
So, oh no, my headphones are dying. I guess I'll have to go live, huh? Does
We
that
can
mess
we
things
can
up?
raw dog it. No, it'll be all right.
All right.
Let me pause. I gotta pee too. So good.
Oh, yeah. Can I wait,
Take a little break. Let's go piss.
wait 1 second? I can't hear you.
And we're back. Welcome back. Welcome back, Pat. How my piss was great. Thank you for asking. Let's see. So you just opened 2x4, and you got a house in New
Yeah.
Jersey.
So at this point, I feel like, real life was a little bit more in effect. I was, uh, like I'd mentioned, just being a kid that just was riding his bike, and at one point money was just piling up. But now I've got like real responsibilities and a mortgage to pay and a house to take care of, and a fence to replace, and like
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And I'm now at this point I'm starting to run a shop. um that was kind of my goal, I guess. At this point, I mean, I was only maybe 26, but in my head I was trying to think to the future. And I was serious with the girl I was with then, and we actually got like engaged around that time as well. So I was like, all right, I could probably do this BMX thing for like a while longer, but probably in my early 30s, it'll probably wind down, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking. So I'm like, let me set this shop up. And then by the time that's kind of done. I'll be like in full gear with that. So, and you know, I was really at the time, I think the shop really spoke to me because I had thought about doing, you know, a brand or something at certain points, but at the time I felt like it was, you know, by then I feel like a lot of rider owned companies were starting, a lot of newer companies. And I felt in a way it was almost like flooded by that point. So I was like, you know what, I would rather like, instead of doing a brand where I have to like create new products and new logos and new t-shirts like every season or every whatever, I'm like, I think I would have more fun just seeing like all my friends are doing cool companies already, so that this way I can like just support the stuff that I'm a part of and other people are a part of that I like. You know, I can help push their thing. I'm like, there's tons of brands, but not enough shops or core shops that are like pushing this and like connecting these things with the scene. So I was like, to me, it seemed really fun to be able to do jams and video premieres and like, you know, things that like if we wanted to do, we could do, but we weren't forced to. Like, oh, we can, if we have a cool idea for a logo, we can make a t-shirt, but it's not like a brand where like every season we have to have a new line of shirts or something. So, you know, I felt like it was just an outlet to do anything fun that we wanted to do without as much pressure. That's how I looked at it anyway. Which we did do that. You know, we did a lot of cool stuff, and I mean, especially the video. I still to this day like I'm proud and love how the video came out. I mean, we got to work. I got to work with like, you know, all the Jersey and PA crew, like all like a lot of my good friends. You know, it was like the team was like, it was funny too because the team was stacked, but it's just because like all those guys were my friends. So like sometimes I think people like would perceive the shop to be a lot bigger than it was because
Me included.
yeah,
Two
it
by
was
four
like
was the
my
shit.
shop and we had this like A team. And I mean, we did okay, but we were basically like a local shop with a global image. It was kind of weird, but we didn't really like 95% of our sales was somebody that came to the shop and bought something. And then we started to do a little bit of stuff online, but it wasn't like we were some like people might have known who we were all over the world, but we weren't selling parts to people all over the world, you know? So
Yeah.
it was, you know, but yeah, I mean, because you know, we had like Wiz and Chase Dehart and Randy Brown, Jeff Slatterly, Daryl Taco, you know, and then like,
Stacked. That's so
yeah,
nuts. Yeah.
I definitely left out a couple names. So, but yeah, I mean, we had like, so yeah, the video came out awesome and we had fun. I mean, I did that for like 6 years. Um, and then I guess that's where like, you know, like starts to get interesting too. Cause like I said, I thought at this point in my life, fast forward from opening the shop to 6 years later, it's where I kind of thought my like career would be winding down. I would be maybe thinking about having a kid or like, you know, like kind of settling down a little bit. Like, okay, I'm just gonna stick around, run the shop, and you know. But then you know, I ended up getting divorced, and uh, and then like my career was going as well or better than it ever had been, and I was having opportunities to travel all over the world. And at that point, the shop was, I wouldn't say struggling, but maybe not doing as well as it had the first few years. And I think part of that was because I was maybe less hands-on at that point. I was traveling and things and kind of putting things in other people's hands a little bit more. And I definitely saw that it suffer because of that. Because I think, um, you know, whether it's because I wasn't working on it or whether people just connected the shop with me and me not being there as much hurt. I'm not sure, but either way, I wasn't like giving it as much attention as it required. And so in my head, I was like, well, I either have to like, and it got to the point where I felt like I wasn't really making any money from the shop at that point. Like all the money it made in the beginning, it used to help grow it. And then at that point, it was like, okay, like I'm kind of like coming home from a trip, doing a whole bunch of work, like, you know, paying invoices, ordering, doing payroll, all these things. And at the end of the day, like there's nothing left for me.
Yeah.
You know, like it's self-sufficient, like I'm not losing money, but like I'm doing a lot of work to not get anything out of it after 6 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, I either have to like focus entirely on the shop, or I think it's time to let it go and just enjoy riding while I can. And like I said, being like life just not going exactly in the direction that I thought it would, it was like, hey, let's travel the world and ride BMX again. Like let's,
Fuck yeah.
you know, do that. And that's when I really focused. You know, that was kind of probably right around the time, maybe it was just before, but like the Colt Fit split had happened, and
Okay.
like the Robbie Mueller split had happened, and
Yeah.
I was like dead set on like I had some pretty bitter feelings about the way some of that happened, and the way that I felt like kind of Fit was being attacked in a way, and I was like, oh fuck no, like this, we're not going to sink because of this. You know what I mean? Like, so I was really motivated to like head up trips and organize filming projects. And we did a bunch of those like fit tripping projects that came out back then. I don't know if you remember those,
I
but
do.
you know, like a trail one and a street one. And like, you know, just, so I was really trying to, you know, it wasn't my official role, but almost play like team manager kind of role, because I just felt like it was something that was lacking and something that I felt like needed to happen. And I wanted us to keep doing cool shit. So, and then eventually that led to us starting to work on Holy Fit. And by that point, I knew, like in my head too, I'm like, all right, this is probably like the last all in video part I have in me. Like, and I was like, I'm going as hard as I can for this. And like, you know, Chris allowed me to kind of like, you know, he really took like my input on things, and like we brought Stu on board. And like that was also kind of the first time since maybe Criminal Mischief that I'd done a project where it was, you know, the same person was filming most of it, and the person that was filming it was going to be editing it, and it was someone I trusted. And so it was like, it felt just like all the stars had aligned to like create the best thing I could possibly create. So,
Yeah.
and that I was just like, it's the only thing I really had to focus on at that time. So I was just like really highly motivated. And yeah, like
Turned out pretty good, dude.
thanks.
Holy
Yeah.
shit. Not bad, bro. Not bad.
Yeah. No, I loved working on that project. I mean, just all the guys that we traveled with, and again, working with Stu. I like love working with Stu. I mean, I worked with Stu on the original Anthem. I had like a split part in that.
Damn.
And like,
When is
that was
this?
just,
When was the original
like,
Anthem?
I feel like these
90s?
clips were filmed roughly 96 or 97. Because like I was at that time, I was just old enough that I would either go with my friends, or maybe I had my license by then, and I would go to Posh and ride. And that's when I met like, I think Joe and Taj and Stu all lived in a house together. And and I was like like I went to their house, like I met those guys, and I was like freaking out, you know, like these
Yeah.
guys
Holy
are
shit.
my heroes.
Yeah.
And like that's why I laughed during Stu's podcast, because you didn't know like what Scum was and like Scum 1201 was, because like that was like a huge deal to me. And like 1201 was like my Bible, you know, like I watched that video so many times, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, the Stu, this is the guy who made 1201. And like I'm meeting him, and I'm meeting Joe and Taj, and like Joe gave me a pair of Etnies, I think, like, and I was like, oh my God, like I couldn't believe it, you know.
That's amazing.
And then Stu was like, oh, do you want to film a couple clips for the video? And I was like, oh my God, the guy who made 1201 is asking me to film clips with him, you know? So I was
Huge
like,
deal.
yeah, just kind of tripping out. But yeah, so then like, you know, fast forward, obviously by this point, me and Stu were good friends, and like life was a
That's
lot
dope.
different than 96, but like, you know, but still to have that like deep rooted connection and history, and then to be able to work on a project like Holy Fit together was awesome. And then
That's like perfect.
all the guys on the team, like traveling with them. Like I still miss like, especially like Ben Lewis. Like I miss traveling with him, and just,
He
you know,
seems
just a lot
fun,
of,
Ben.
yeah, no, he is. He's the guy
Fun.
who's always up for anything. Like I said, like I like people that are remember he came to Philly one time, and we had like a couple days before the trip started, and I was just like took him fishing with my dad, and he's
Nice.
totally about it. And like he'd never been fishing, he'd never caught a fish, and like my dad still laughs about it to this day because like when you're fishing, you cast out, you reel in, whatever, and like sometimes it takes a while to catch something, and like if you've never done it, you almost start to think like, does this even work,
Yeah.
And then like Benny's rod tip starts going like this, and he's like super calm and casual, and he just like looks at my dad and he's like, "Is this promising?" Like, my dad's like, "Yeah, set the hook," and he's like reels it in. He's just giggling the whole time. He's got a
This is
split
promising.
yeah.
While we're so like pause at Holy Fit, I want to know how, because like you mentioned that your first bikes that you had together, like a dirt jumping bike and a racing bike, were both S&Ms, and then kind of come full circle, and you ride for Fit after Schwinn.
Yeah.
Is it straight to Fit, or did you go S&M after? Like,
No.
how'd you build the relationship with Moeller?
Yeah. So I mean, to be honest, it was more Robbie in the beginning. Like I was riding for Schwinn, and then Schwinn had actually started to get weird, like because I didn't know it at the time, but they were on the verge of filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But like things had gotten really weird with Schwinn, and I was just like not really into it because I never really wanted to ride for a company like Schwinn in the first place. It was just like a great opportunity at the time, but the idea of riding for like a more core company always appealed to me more. So, and there's actually a weird story too, because I had like a 2 or 3 year contract with Schwinn, and during the course of like having signed that, I'd like kind of blown up a bit, so I like talked to them, and I was like asked them if I could like renegotiate my deal, and they were like I'll never know if it was some kind of weird strategy or if they're just this crazy that they thought I wouldn't care. But they were basically insinuating that like part of me getting a raise meant that they would have to like drop like Brian Wismerski, who weirdly was on Schwinn at the time as well, like for a second, which is actually another funny story. I'll make that one short because basically like John Paul was asking for recommendations, and he asked me and Joey Garcia who they should put on, and Joey told him Rob Darden, and I said Brian Wismerski. And I don't know why John Paul chose Brian, but like they were the two options at hand at one point. So anyway, where was I? I lost track of my story.
Well, you're in this 3-year contract, and then within
Oh
1 year
yeah.
you blow up.
So they insinuated to me that they would like have to drop Wiz to like give me my raise, which made absolutely no sense, first of all, because like I was starting to get to like a different level of money at that point, and I think Brian was still on like a $300 or $500 a month deal, so like for them to say like we have to cut Brian's $300 or $500 a month to like it was wacky. But like in retrospect, that whatever deal I would have signed wouldn't have lasted anyway, but I didn't know that at the time. But I was like, my deal was finished at the end of that year, so I was like, you know what, I was like, this is kind of weird, like I don't really like what you're saying, so I'm gonna just like ride out my contract and kind of explore my options at the end of this year. And meanwhile, I'd like seen Robbie at 7-Eleven trails or something, and we got talking, and like he was into me being on Fit. And so then I actually called Schwinn and was like, hey, like, can I get out of my contract? Like, I'm going to do this other thing. Like, I think I was even out with ACL surgery at the time. I was like, I can't even ride right now. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do at the end of the year, either way. Like, so it's up to you guys if you want me to stick around until the end of the year or if I can move on. And I wasn't really getting an answer or a call back. And I think it took me like 2 or 3 months for them to finally hit me back. And one of the guys from one of the bigger guys at Schwinn, like one of the corporate guys, called me and was like, hey, Van, he's like, you're the first guy I'm calling with this news because you're going to be the only one that's not completely bummed to hear it. Like Schwinn's following Chapter 11, like the program's done. Like, you're free to ride for Fit or do whatever you want to do. And I was like, oh shit, so then it kind of just naturally like transitioned into fit. And like you said, I mean, I was psyched because I mean, I was psyched on what Robbie was doing at the time. And I was like, obviously I rode S&Ms in the past. So I was psyched on what Chris was doing. And it was just like, yeah, that was like the perfect scenario. And now I was part of like something more core, which is what I really wanted to be involved with. Just the team at the time was a dream team. And it just, yeah, everything about it was sick. So, yeah.
Dude, it truly was the dream team back in the day. Like when I first started riding, fit was fucking way up there. So sick. And still great, but that moment in time is pretty magical.
We definitely had something that's like hard to recapture. I mean, with
100%.
With Mikey and Edwin and Foster, and it's just like there was definitely like and even just the time. Sometimes I feel like like it was a different time. So I feel like even though guys are at that level now, it's just a different world, the way that media is produced, and like even like the impact that my criminal mischief part had. I feel like it would be really hard to make that impact again, and not because my riding was that much better or my video part was that much better than anything that's happened since or now, but I just think that things are more, it just moves faster.
It's the media landscape.
Yeah. So it's just, no matter how good someone is or how good their video part is, it doesn't stick with you the way that people would just put that VHS in for years straight until it was worn out. Now it's like, I mean, I watched
next. Yeah.
I watched.
And it's over.
I watched that video part, and now like maybe I'll check it out one more time, but like it's not like you have 4 videos come out a year and you're like, which one are we going to put in the VCR? It's like, oh, what new video is out today? Like,
we are kind of spoiled with that, and then it kind of oversaturates. And you're right about the impact thing. Like there's maybe some Instagram clips that people talk about that make that big of an impact, but really there's no VHS being abused in somebody's basement over and over and over it again. It's just different times.
It's different. I think that's a good point to say that it's different. I don't think it's better or worse. I think it's different. That's actually something I get kind of frustrated about, when people just get hung up on a certain era. Like a lot of times, like I feel like a lot of mid-school guys are like, oh, BMX isn't the same anymore. And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of think it's just as good. Like a lot of
riding your bike.
And I think in some ways it's better. In some ways it's different. I mean, it's easy to like romanticize a certain era of your life because it was fun, or it was, or it's even just easy to forget the negative aspects of any part of your life. Like you look back on things and you're like, oh, that was great, but you forget whatever struggles or stress you had and only focus on the good things. I think it's really easy to do. And I don't know, I think right now in BMX there's so much cool shit going on, and I think if whatever you think is rad, you should get involved with that. And if you have the means, like if there's something you don't like, create something you like. And if you can't, if you're too busy, then at least buy the book that you think is cool, or go to the event that you think is cool, or just tune in online to watch it. Like give it an extra view, however big or small that contribution is. I think you just contribute to what you think's rad and be part of it.
Preach, dude. Amen. That's bomb. All right. Now, speaking of amen, we're back to Holy Fit. Holy Fit just happened. I mean, we're just breezing past like filming Fit Life, filming Stay Fit, all the accomplishments there, which are phenomenal. But let's I guess Holy Fit is what, 2013, 2014?
It came out in 14, I think. It was released in 2014.
I think I was at that Nora Cup. That might be where I remember you, or like shaking your hand or something, whatever.
Right.
So then what, dude? What happens after Holy Fit? Now you're like, okay, I'm retired?
No, I mean, first of all, that Nora Cup was pretty epic for me because it had been like, I think 11 years since like I won a Street Rider of the Year Nora Cup. Yeah. So like to kind of have such a deliberate goal, like I feel like all the stuff that happened early in my career, it just kind of was happening. So like without thinking about it, you're just doing it, you know, and then like that was very intentional, like how I went about filming that video part and like my goal to make it the best thing I could. So like to win a Nora Cup for that at 34 was like a pretty cool feeling, you know. But yeah, I mean, after that, then it was just like, yeah, I mean, I certainly wasn't done at that point. I was still, you know, I was still riding events, but maybe that's like around the time or a little earlier than that when I started like judging some stuff. And but I was still riding in some stuff. Like I rode in some of those like even contests still at that point. Like I rode in some of those like downhill like dew tour
Oh
contests
yeah,
they had.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like those were pretty cool. Like
I
I
think
feel like
about that contest a lot, actually. Like when people talk about street contests, I'm like, that one was the sickest, you know? Like cool action, literally on the street contest.
no, they were rad because I kind of liked how they sort of like combined street and park elements into one course, and you know, they're most of them were downhill, so it was kind of like higher speed kind of stuff. So it was, yeah, those were fun, and I really liked those. And but yeah, I did that, and then probably the last big thing I did was like the real BMX in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was like after that, that was when I knew like that was the cutoff for me. Like, so I went in hard for that, and I'm really happy. Like, me and Navaz put out a video that I'm really psyched on, and but I beat myself up filming that, and I was like surprised that I survived it without a real injury after some of the slams I took, and that was when I was like, I'm done riding street like that forever. Like it's like I'm not done riding. I'm not even done like pushing myself or riding at a level that I think is pro, but I'm never doing that again. Like
Yeah.
pushing to absolute boundary on street. Like I just it was like that was it. And then I think that couple years, like from 16 to 18, was where, you know, I was really trying to figure out what that next move was going to be while still being active. I mean, we even did like fun stuff. Like I remember riding in the Mongoose Jam thing with like Greg Illingworth and like Murray Lobster and
Legends.
who was the other guy on our team? Was it just the three of us? Maybe it was just the three of us. Yeah. And then I forget. God, I feel terrible because I forget the name of the guy who was filming and doing the editing, but he was super cool and did a kick-ass job. So we should find his name later, put it on the screen or something after. I don't know.
I'll find it now.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I was still working on stuff. I had a lot of fun doing that project, and you know, but it was like, again, that's kind of when the writing was on the wall. And then in 2018, that's
Kevin
when
Schneider. Shout out
okay, yeah,
Kevin Schneider.
Kevin, yep,
Okay, carry on.
Kevin, good working with you. Sorry, I couldn't remember your name. um, and then yeah, that was you know, those next couple years were kind of where I was still putting in work as a rider, but trying to figure out what was next. And then when 2018 came, it was like, and the Tokyo thing came up, it was like, all right, like to me, like 2018 is the last year that I considered myself a professional BMXer, you know?
Nice.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I was still active, still doing some things, but I was like, okay, my focus is somewhere else now.
Which is, you know, a blessing. I think not everybody gets that. A lot of people would just like have to figure something out outside of BMX,
Yeah.
but you're making the graceful transition into a different part of the sport, which is so interesting to think about. You know what I thought about earlier when you were talking about at the World Championships, how all of the cycling comes together, and then just to like remember that BMX freestyle is such a tiny little fucking niche within the bicycle industry. It's kind of like humbling, you know. It's like, oh cool, we all love this BMX freestyle thing, but it's so small, you know, like it's
Yeah.
a tiny little thing, and you get to, I don't know, expand and meet all the people that you know there now and live that life, which is really cool. Happy for you, dude. And you get
No,
to live
it's
in dope places. Get the hell out of
oh,
here.
thank you. Yeah. No, it's fun. Yeah, I love the opportunity to be able to experience places and different cultures, like, and actually live there. You know, it's like I've always traveled and visited places, but you definitely get a whole different experience when you have the chance to live somewhere. And
And
you
become
know,
a local.
going back to like all those things being combined, like I think it's pretty cool. Like even like I said, I was seeing people, like I mentioned earlier, like I was seeing people from like the three different worlds, and like, you know, I think it's cool to even see how they like benefit each other. I mean, outside of the realm of like the obvious of like, you know, us being there judging events and having the opportunity to have a job and the experience of doing that. And then you have, you know, then you have guys like Jamie Beswick and Ryan Nyquist and Tobias Wilkie, like being coaches for these teams and being able to like work with and support those younger riders. And then, you know, you even have something as crazy as like, you wouldn't think that these two worlds would connect in this way, but like you had the Dig 30-year anniversary party, and like, the UCI actually gave money to the city of Glasgow, and in order to support like events or things that promoted getting people on bikes. So like, believe it or not, the UCI actually helped pay for the Dig 30-year anniversary party.
Nice.
Which is pretty like, which is pretty cool to me, like to see it like directly benefiting the core of it. And like, you know, because you know, sometimes there'll be like controversy if some people aren't into that world, or like some people whatever. And I, you know, I can understand that, I can get that, but I've always been like an advocate of like saying like, no, I think this is good, like even if it's not your thing, I think this benefits everyone. And then to see it so directly like apply, it's like, wow, this, like I actually do feel pretty good about this, you know. Like it's like, I mean, and like anything, not everything's, of course, with anything that comes, you know, big money or big involvement, there's like things that have to be like discussed or compromised or whatever, like just working at the Olympics, you know, of course, like there's frustrating times, but you like, I think in the end it's like beneficial overall, like it's, you know. Well, and it's,
so what you're saying is you're a fan of trickle down economics.
Okay, all right, put me in my place. Let's not talk politics.
Fucking with you. That's funny. So what's one of the frustrating things of working for, I mean, you still work there, so be careful, you know what I'm saying? But I would imagine like just red tape, and it's a big company, so the bureaucracy of it all is kind of like, you know, if you want to get something done, and like you said it in another podcast, it's a slow moving, change is very slow in a world like that. Is there anything else that frustrates you there? How's the food? They got good lunches?
The food at the,
I'm joking.
No, I think like, I mean, I think you nailed it. And I think this is something I knew before I even showed up in Tokyo. Like I knew that, you know, an organization this big is a bureaucracy. And that's probably the most frustrating thing, is that like everything moves slowly. And you're also explaining things that are common sense to you and I about your sport to people that don't understand it. But also, that's comforting to me that that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm here to do that, and I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to help people understand it, and I'm happy to do whatever I can to make the events as good as they can be and to make the exposure as good as it can be. So, and involve the right people. I mean, that's why I feel lucky that like I said, I was able to hire a team in Tokyo, and five of those people working under me were BMXers, you know. So it's like, it's pretty cool to be able to like go to Tokyo and say like work on the Olympics, and then be like, all right, who should we hire? And I'll be like, hire Peggy, hire Hiroshi, hire Takashi, you know, hire Kotaro, like, you know. And it's yeah, like but yeah, I think just the slow moving red tape bureaucracy is the, but again, I knew what I was getting into. So that really hasn't bothered me too much, because that's, you have to be patient, and you just have to try to convey the messages that need to be conveyed when the time's appropriate. And you know, it's just the way that any course this big is gonna work, you know. So
well, I mean, the so there's two questions that I want to talk about. One is going back to like filming video parts in your heyday, versus the other route we could go is talking about next year's Olympics and where they're at right now. You pick. This is like a Goosebumps podcast. You
What
choose
was the
your own
first
adventure.
question?
First question would be your mindset when it comes to getting yourself to do scary shit, and just
Hmm.
going back to you know, talking about like it hit me when you said I'm never riding street like that again. And then I was like, what is like that? That is probably like pushing yourself to do shit that you know you could get hurt on, but you're, you know, still sending it. So that is always interesting to me, like the mindset behind that, like what motivates you to do it in the first place, and then how do you get yourself to click that button that just says the fuck it button is what I call it, you know? Like, so a lot of riders are different. They have different modes. Some only do the one and done type big banger stuff. Then some people are killing themselves on a 7-stair for 2 hours straight before they land it. I don't know. What's your general take on like why did you do all the shit that you did? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I couldn't tell you exactly why I did it, like, or why I was motivated to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I definitely enjoyed that feeling. Like, it's weird because I feel like there's two different feelings in BMX that I enjoy, and maybe they're one and the same in a way, because you know, it's something like flowing through a set of trails just obviously just feels good and you're comfortable doing that and it feels nice. Um and then there's other things that I feel like it just feels good to roll away from, and you're just, that feeling of like accomplishment is just like energy that you can't really replicate any other way.
Yep.
But also in a way they connect, because some of those things that are super scary feel amazing too, but you just aren't going to keep doing it repeatedly. Like doing a huge gap to rail, like, feels unbelievable, but like if you know just keep doing a gap to rail, eventually you're going to die, like, you know, like you're not just going to do it all day long, like, you know. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I guess, like, but that feeling of riding away, and then I guess my mindset, like going into those kind of things, also like kind of changed um, over the course of my riding, because I feel like in the beginning of my riding, I was a little more spontaneous, where like I would just almost not want to think too hard about it, and I would just like, sometimes I would even like start doing things before like someone even had the camera out, you know, and they'd be like, you know, to where I remember like Derek would just get used to the fact that like if I had a certain look in my eye, he would just get the camera out because he
Yeah.
just knew I might just go. But I don't feel like that's the safer way to ride. So I think as I got older, I started to be a lot more calculated, and I would really think about like choosing my battles and like the things I really wanted to do and really take risks on. And then I would like, you know, I would really just think through the tricks a lot more methodically, and yeah, like, um, and then kind of sleep on it, and sometimes barely sleep on it, how depending on how scary
Yeah.
it was, but like, you know, and then yeah, you would, and but I never had, I rarely ever had that problem with like, once I committed to something, like I would go, like, you know, if I knew I was going to do something, I could be like, all right, this one, and I was going, like, you know,
Nice.
it
Yeah.
wasn't like
That's not
I
easy to do, dude. That's the question, is like when you say, okay, I'm gonna go, because like I've done it where I say, all right, this is the go, and then I fucking can't get my body to go. You know, it's just like
right.
stuck. You know, I'm like shit, and then I scream, and then I give up, and I say sorry to the filmer. So like, what is it that there's a button or something, right? Like, what is that? You know what I'm
I
saying?
I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't answer that question. I don't know what it is in me, but I feel like I've kind of always had that, where like once I made up my mind that I'm going, I'm going. Like, and the only trick that, you know, what trick would get me on that, the only thing that would make me do like run ups, like, was backwards rails. That's the only trick where I would be like, all right, I'm coming, and I'd be like, oh fuck no, oh, hold on. Like for some reason, backwards rails like always freaked me out. Like,
Pretty spooky, dude.
yeah, I
Especially those
never
ones.
got totally comfortable with those.
You
Always
know, I was
scared.
talking to Fu from Epic BMX, Epic, yeah, in California, the shop. Um, Max Wu Tang's dad, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was talking about like the way Wait, he said it was just stupidity. Not saying you're stupid, but like when you're young and you don't calculate everything that could go wrong, you just learn shit and you just do shit and you figure it out. And then as you get older, you're like, oh, I could get hurt on that. I don't want to, risk that or whatever. And so it's just being young and dumb is like an advantage to BMX riding. And I was like, I could see
No,
that, like
definitely some truth to that.
yeah, yeah, right.
And your body's also like I don't I realize like I'm not as good now because I don't want to crash. Like everything I do, I want to do it first try. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to run out of something. I don't want to step out of something. So like I'm scared to not pull it first try. Where before I'm just like,
I'll figure it out.
only scared, really scary stuff. Now I'm like, I don't want to jump off that rail. I don't want to run out of that transition. Like even doing a lip trick, I don't want to run down a 6-foot quarter pipe. It's like not
Yeah.
a big deal, but I don't want to do it anymore.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
There was one clip you just posted that was so sick over pegs. It might have been from your edit, but it was at a playground and it was over pegs around a curve and then into the bank. And I was just like, damn, still going. It's a hammer clip.
I know. I think did I just put that in my story or something as a throwback?
It was a carousel post from a little while ago.
Yeah, I think that was from my Tokyo edit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bomb.
Thank you.
I just got so distracted right now. Oh. Uh, so we talked about the mindset of hammers, and we covered all the shit that I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the classics. What are you proudest of? I know in Unclicked you guys talked about your scariest ones, and that would be the Stay Fit whip, and then the manual gap rail. But what about proudest? What sticks out to you as proudest moment on the bike?
Like a specific clip or just like in general?
Whatever pops into your head.
I think so. I have a few things that like are like highlights. I feel like one would actually be going way back. Like I said, it doesn't really count. But when I won national #1 novice, like that was kind of like a father son thing.
Yeah.
Like going. So like when I like at the Grands when I came across the finish line and we like knew I had the title and my dad was like at the finish line like hugged me and like like so it was like that was kind of like a pretty special moment that I can still like recall.
Fuck yeah.
And then I think like maybe like my first Nora Cup, like for Street Rider of the Year, was pretty amazing because it was like, I was young and it was just in Vegas and like all my friends were there and like just like this like celebration, picking you up and like pouring drinks, all and just just this, like it's all kind of new to you still. So it's like that was pretty special. And then another one would be like getting an X Games medal in 2008, because I'd ridden X, like I think my first X Games was 98 or 99, second one in San Diego, and I rode in like dirt for like 3 years. Then I think I was in park for like 3 years, and then like I thought like my X Games stuff was done, and I even had like small regrets sometimes because in San Francisco the one year it was a weird year and it was windy and the jumps were kind of weird and people were like really struggling. So like a lot of the guys who could do some of the bigger stuff couldn't really do their bigger tricks. So kind of just like flowing and being stylish and doing some basic stuff. And I feel like it got to a point where if I'd have just done like a really basic run, like there was 2 jumps, maybe I did a turn down and then a bar spin to X up or something. Like maybe I'm simplifying it too much, but maybe not. And wouldn't have took much, and I would have probably been like on the podium, and I like for some reason, because I'm probably me, and like this is why we're probably talking about my mindset right now. But there was like these 2 roll-ins. So there was like a really steep, like tall roll-in that was actually like steep and scary enough that like you almost like lost your stomach the first time you went down it, like for the big section. And then like to the right of that was like a much smaller platform. Like I don't know how many feet, but maybe 10 or 15 feet down. And there was like a railing on the edge of it. And I was like, I want to do that gap. Like, and this isn't going to count for my score at all. I just want to do it. So I like gapped over the railing from the big roll in into the smaller roll in. Like, but then I was like, I was going like 100 miles an hour and like shot the first jump by like a mile. And I always thought of that. I was always like, oh man, like that was my like probably my only chance to ever get like an X Games medal, you know? So like, I kind of blew it. Like, but a part of me is happy too that I like kind of did what I do and like I don't know. I feel like that's more memorable than
that is.
But
so
then when they
to redeem in 2008.
Yeah, but then when they put street in the X Games, like they started with like the international ones in like 2007, I think, but then they put it in LA like legit, and yeah, that was like the first one, and I got like silver there, and it was like pretty
special.
Again, yeah, it was pretty special, and again, it was like, you know, I was 28 by that point, so I feel like anything I was accomplishing by that point, like I really didn't take for granted. You know, it was like it meant a lot at that point. It wasn't just like, feel like if I won a silver medal at the X Games at, you know, 18, I'd just be like, oh, okay, cool. I have this now. That's rad. Like, you know, but you appreciate it more when you get older and realize what it takes and the work that it takes to.
Yeah, for real. That's something that you don't think about a lot. And even just like talking to other BMX homies, it's just, we all kind of take for granted all the hours and time that you've put on the bike, you know, like everything that led up to being 28 and winning X Games. Like that's, you know, 20,000 hours of practicing, which is kind of nuts to think about.
And I was very conscious of like wanting that too. Like it wasn't like, I feel like any other like events that like any like I mean probably events in general, I always approached this way, like where I was like, oh, I like contests, they're fun, but I'm not really a contest guy. I don't really care how I do. I'll just go do my best and whatever, you know? And I feel like that event was the first time in my life where I was like, I'm capable of getting a medal at the X Games and I fucking want it, you know? Like, and yes. I was like serious about it. I went there with like every intention of doing my best to get on the podium, not just being like, oh, whatever, I'm at a contest. This is cool. It's fun. Like, I mean, it was fun. And I mean, I wouldn't be like, have a bad attitude if I didn't do well, but I certainly went there trying to
yeah, fuck yeah. That's good to hear. Because you hear most of the time it's like the other attitude of like, just okay, let's just go have fun. But really, I think I don't know. To be honest about like, no, I want to fucking win. You know, like it's pretty cool.
I wanted to be on the podium. That was my goal. And you know, I think like everyone anyone who rides BMX, especially if they ride in BMX contests, like you have to have some sort of like competitive nature inside you. Like, I don't think like I do think there's a level of taking it too serious. Like even, you know, going back to some of the UCI stuff, sometimes I see guys like, I think it's all great, but sometimes I see guys posting like posts like after an event and they're just like, oh, I let everyone down, or I like this. And I'm like,
yeah,
man, this is a bike contest. Like this is awesome. But like, shit, man, at the end of the day, it's a bike contest. So like do your best and fight for it. Like, I think I respect that, but like, don't beat yourself up, man. Don't beat yourself up like over like not getting the result that you would want or you think someone else should want from a bike contest, you know? Like that's where maybe it goes too far in my mind, you know?
Well, it's hard. I mean, I put myself in the shoes of somebody who's my whole existence has led up to this competing at this UCI contest. And then it's like, you feel like you let the whole world down, but realistically you just don't have that perspective yet of like having enough life under your belt to be like, oh yeah, this is just a bike contest. Like, so it's kind of weird because you want that. I picture about like the best, the goats are always the ones who are just like nothing else, tunnel vision. This is what I'm focused on. But there's like a downside to that, which is the you know, the letting the post of, I'm sorry for letting everybody down. It's like, damn, dude, give yourself a break, man.
Totally. Yeah.
Which is, I think it comes with time. I don't know. There's probably a young kid that said that, if I had to put money on it. All right, let's do some podcast questions. We did the young up and coming riders.
Check that one off right away.
Let's talk about Mount Rushmore.
All right. I got this. I've thought about this a little bit. So like I see a lot of them and I'm always like, I feel like a lot of people like list their favorite riders,
Yeah.
you know, which like to me, like when you say like a Mount Rushmore, I'm like, I don't think this is necessarily about like who my favorite riders or my like who I was most influenced by, but like who like steered certain aspects of BMX in a specific
Court's in
direction.
order, and Judge Homan is here,
Yeah.
and let's go.
So I have to say, like the first one, I would say Bob Harrow
Nice.
because
That's I don't
like
think that's been said yet.
yeah, because I feel like from again, this is a little bit before my time, but like from my understanding, like you know, I feel like Bob Harrow was like integral in like I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying this that he was the first one to work on designing a bike that was specifically for freestyle. You know, so between that and then I think they like he was part of like the first shows too, like the first freestyle demos. You know, I don't know if those, I think they might have started at races or something, like some of the first freestyle demos, but like, you know, I feel like that was kind of the beginning of freestyle. Like, you know, maybe some other people had like, I don't know if he's technically like the father of it or however you want to put it, but like, I feel like a pretty integral part in like introducing it, you
Yeah.
know, to the world, like in the early 80s.
I need to do my Bob Harrow homework. I don't know enough
Yeah.
about him, but yeah. Okay. Good one.
And then the next one is a given. I mean, I think it's impossible to deny Matt Hoffman belongs on the Mount Rushmore. I mean, just with everything that he did as a rider, and you know, even with like I said, with the products, I feel like Matt and Moeller and Rick Malterno were like, in my opinion, some of the first guys to build bikes that could actually hold up to the stuff we were putting them through, and you know, on top of that, like events in the early days, just like with the CFBs, and then starting to work with ESPN, you know, and all that stuff to like, you know, build they were called the B3s back then, and yeah, like I think just those early days of like, and it, you know, probably even before that with the BS contests, and you know, so I think,
What did
you
Stu
know,
say? Stu said like BMX freestyle wouldn't exist if it weren't for Hoffman, and it's like, word,
yeah,
you know?
maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, like Stu said, he definitely did a lot during a time when it was in a dead period.
Yeah.
So, you know, just bringing the people together, and you know, I respect Matt a lot too because I think he did stuff at a time where like, you know, he had resources to do it, and he figured out ways to do it with his resources. You know, like I feel like sometimes there's people that like talk about this should happen or that should happen or like, but they're not going to do something unless somebody hands them a giant pile of money to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that Matt did it at a time when like it really needed to be done, and he did it. You know, and I think the same still goes for like a lot of core events. I think sometimes people get like, you know, even just all the stuff Crandall does. It's like he's going to do an event whether he has $5 to do it or $1 million to do it. It's just it might be a different event, but he's going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's the spirit you need to have. And I think in those early days, I think that's kind of the spirit Matt had. Like I'm gonna do something. You know.
Which is dope.
Yeah.
Okay. So far,
Um,
so good. Bob Harrell, Matt Hoffman.
so then I think like in a different direction, I think Jay Lonergan.
What?
So Jay Lonergan,
I don't even know who Jay Lonergan is. Is
Posh,
this bad?
founder of Posh.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. So I think like, um, you know, Jay might not be like as well noted for his like riding specifically, but I feel like with like Posh and like those like Pennsylvania trails, I think he really like influenced like all the other scenes, like a lot of things that were happening simultaneously with like back in the day, like with the 7-Eleven trails and push trails and all that. Like in my opinion, a lot of that was like kind of influenced by like trails went from just being jumps to being trails. And I feel like a lot of that was like inspired by Jay and by like those like Eastern PA trails.
Damn.
And then like quickly, like I said, like it became like an East, like a Pennsylvania East Coast thing in general, where you had like push and 7-Eleven trails and stuff like that. But I feel like that he was like really the beginning of like creating jumps that weren't just like a jump in the woods. It was like, this is art, this is trails, this is like something more. And then like, you know, to then take that, and unfortunately like Posh just got plowed this year, but like, you know, just Posh alone was 30 years old, and he was doing stuff before that too, you know. So I think like I feel like he influenced like the trail culture that now happens worldwide, like was kind of the beginning.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't yeah, that's amazing. All right, shout out Jay Lonergan.
So, and then my last one would be Edwin De La Rosa. So I feel like even though we're getting into like another era, I feel like Edwin just totally changed the way that people looked at street riding. And I think he took it from, you know, like obviously there was stuff happening before him and like the influence of like Joe and Taj that I was mentioning. But I feel like he took it from almost being like stunts to like really riding street, you know, like it, and like just putting his style on it, and just it like I just feel like his style and his approach towards it just like completely switched it up. And also like, you know, where he's from, you know, like it's interesting that like, you know, someone like Edwin he found out about BMX by seeing Dave Mira on the X Games, you know, but like he didn't have that type of stuff at his disposal to ride or to do. So like he used what he had, and then was influenced like from first seeing Dave, then I'm sure he saw other stuff that influenced his riding, and like figured out like, okay, this is me and this is my environment. And I feel like it just inspired like an entirely different direction of where we see street riding now.
He's incredible. Like you could take anybody and have them do the exact same trick as Edwin, but I'm always going to prefer watching Edwin do it. Like it's just something about him. The swagger, the style is so nice, and it's effortless looking too. But
I mean, first is like you said, his style, and like the, you know, the whole concept of like it's not always what you do but how you do it, like that's a big part of it. But also just even just how I feel like he was one of the first to like really just start linking together lines, and like putting like, I hate comparing things to skateboarding, but kind of making it look like a little more like flowy on street. And again, getting away from like, I feel like, you know, a lot of my street riding even is like, a lot of it is kind of stunts.
You're a stunt guy,
like
man.
Street stunts, you know, like you're not really like, are you street riding or are you street stunting, you know, like, and I feel like Edwin made it street riding, and like that's what you see now, you know.
Well said. Yeah. And you got to be there on Fit with him during like his prime. No, what was that? You got any Edwin stories for us?
I don't know, just I mean, Edwin was just always like funny in the van, you know, like he just always would like just always have good jokes. And like, I mean, they would even I feel like they would even bully me sometimes. Like Vic and Edwin would be like, nah, man, like they would have like two vans, and they would like make me get in the boring van because like, nah, man, your jokes are dry. You gotta go on the
Hell yeah, dude. So cool.
All right, fuck you guys. All right.
That sounds amazing. I think I got to like see Edwin and Tom at Deck Park once, but like they were just chilling, not riding over in the corner. And I just like made me like them even more. It's mysterious fuckers, not even caring about riding. They're just hanging out. Fucking cool guys, legends. Dude, that's a very interesting Mount Rushmore. I'm kind of stoked on that. I think it's correct.
All right, thank you.
Correct Mount Rushmore. I was taking notes in shorthand. I wrote down, you know, just TW and BH, MH, lots of Haro, Hoffman, Lonergan. I don't want to fuck up his name.
Hey, Lonergan.
That's a new one that I'll have to do some looking into. He's not new, obviously, but yeah.
He won a Nor Cup. He won a Nor Cup for Trail Rider like a few years ago.
Yeah, in 2019. That's rad. Oh my God. Chill.
But yeah, I feel like I need to follow that up with just like my I feel like the riders,
your favorites,
that like I was influenced most by were like, I've already obviously mentioned Joe Rich, and I think like all the Gap to Rail stuff and all the rail stuff like really influenced me. And then like Chris Bennett was one of my biggest influences, like as a trail rider, like made me want to do like no footed cans and stuff the way that I do. So I feel like those are like two of my favorite and probably like most like riders that influenced my riding the most.
Yeah. So give me two more. What's
that?
Van's personal Rushmore? Not the correct Rushmore, but
I don't have two more.
okay. That's it. Joe and Chris.
That's all you getting. They were
that's all you get, motherfucker.
Obviously, I have a long list of favorite riders, but I feel like after those two, I feel like there's like too many to start. Like,
yeah, they're up here, and everybody else is a little bit down here.
Yeah, exactly. There's like those two, and then there's like another 20 guys I could put in the next position.
Well, dude, I mean, we've been going for a minute now. It's almost pushing 3 hours. What are you gonna do for the rest of your evening?
Your show. Probably
still bright out, and it's almost 8.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it doesn't get dark here until like 9:30.
Sheesh, cool.
So
what's on the plans?
Probably just gonna relax and watch Netflix, and then wake up and go to work tomorrow.
There we go. Yeah, it's a work day, work week. We're recording. Yep. What day is it? Tuesday? Yeah.
Yep.
Tuesday. I think we're gonna put this out either today or tomorrow. So immediate, instant gratification podcast.
Actually, it's crazy how quick that goes. How quick 3 hours.
Yeah, because like you're locked in, dude. It's like fucking. That's one of the perks of doing this. Like, it's just I never am gonna sit down and like have a 3-hour conversation one-on-one with almost anybody, you know. But in this format, it's like you locked in, and then your brain's trying. Like, it's almost like exhausting. After I do one of these, I'm just like, all right, back to I'm just gonna lock myself in my room for a while. Dude, I heard something interesting about introverts and extroverts. Which one would you consider yourself?
I guess I'm an extrovert, maybe.
There's no right or wrong answer, man.
I just don't really know. I don't really know. Like, I mean, like, I feel like sometimes I can be very outgoing, but then other times I don't really want to be around humans. So I don't know what that means.
I need to recharge. And what I heard, so it's Andrew Huberman. Have you heard of him? He's like a neuroscientist, podcaster guy. He's fucking awesome. You should look him up. I've learned a lot from him. But he was talking about like the dopamine that gets released from social interactions. An introvert has like a huge spike. So like me talking to you right now, if I'm introverted, is like a huge dopamine spike. And then that's all the social interaction I'll need for all day, basically. But an extrovert only gets a tiny little bump. So they want to keep talking to people like constantly to keep up their little dopamine hits. And I'm like, that's fucking interesting. Cause like by that logic, I'm like, I'm definitely a introvert because I could just shut it down and lock myself in the room for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know why I brought that up, but it's fucking interesting, you know? So yeah, nice to talk to you, Van.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, appreciate it. Hopefully hopefully people find some of that interesting.
Yeah, I bet they will. You know, Van Homan will save us. Stan Bowman. Stan Bowman's here to stay.
I don't know.
Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you want to say before we go?
I don't have anything specific, I don't think.
All right, cool. Well,
all right.
Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Adios.
Till next time. Bye-bye.
You've reached the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed that. We talked for so long, but there's still like a good amount of shit I want to talk to him about. So definitely a part 2 in the future. Also, all of your guys' Instagram questions that you submitted, I completely forgot about because by the time it was time to do that, it was 3 hours deep. So round 2 coming. Yeah, dude, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Can't believe you made it all the way through this, but that's it. BMX is dope. Van Homan's fucking awesome. And yeah, bye.